The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Yeah, ready. Just a moment of silence. Okay. Good morning. We call the city CRA meeting to order this morning. We're going to have a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Okay, may I have a motion? Please stop talking. May I have a motion to adopt the minutes from last meeting? All those, yes.
Roll call.
Oh, roll call and then the adoption. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Carlson. Here. Hurtek. Here. Clendenin. Here. Maniscalco. Here. Vieira. Miranda.
Here.
Henderson.
Present. And we have a motion to adopt the minutes from the last meeting by Maniscalco, followed by a second by Miranda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. Okay, so now we are going to have our director, Erica Moody, come up and set the agenda for today. Good morning.
So setting the agenda, we are asking to shift some things. We do have our guest from Jew Park, our chair. So we would be respectfully requesting for a board motion to move item 3 up to number 1 so they can make their presentation and head on with their day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So moved by Board Member Carlson, second by Board Member Maniscalco. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And then we have items for the downtown CRA and the Channelside CRA listed as items 1 and 2 on the final agenda. We are requesting for items 9 and 10 to be moved thereafter so we can have a discussion on all interlocal items in totality to be heard together.
Can I have a motion for that?
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Board
much.
Member Maniscalco, second by Board Member Clendenin. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Board. We have a request for item 5, which is the ferry service update, to be continued to the May 9th, 2024 CRA board meeting.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Thank you, Board.
Okay.
A few more.
Yeah.
Items 6 and 7 both relate to the East Tampa Summer Youth Program. Respectfully requesting for both of those items to be heard together at the same time.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Thank you very much. 3 more requests. Item number 11, the City CRA Service Agreement to be continued to the next board meeting on May 9th, which is item 11.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you, Board. We appreciate that. Request for item 12, the Ybor Arts discussion to be continued to July 25th for an update then.
Second.
Okay.
Thank you, Board.
Board Member Clendenin, second by Board Member Miranda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
And then one more, if I
more.
may. Request for item 13, which is the micro grant level.
Yeah.
We did receive a memorandum from Board Member Vieira to remove it from the agenda, but a board motion will be necessary. Thank you, and that completes the setting of the agenda for
Just a
today.
second. Okay, all those in favor of removing board, item number 13?
Aye.
Okay. Now can we adopt the agenda for today?
So moved. Second.
Board Member Vieira, second by Board Member Maniscalco. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and now we can have public comment after we hear from our attorney.
Good morning. Members of the public are allowed a reasonable opportunity at the beginning of the CRA meeting to address any item on the agenda before the CRA takes official action on any item. However, a 3-minute time limit applies to all speakers providing public comment. Speakers and members of the public are also reminded that they are to refrain from disruptive behavior, including making vulgar or threatening remarks, or making or causing disruptive noises or sounds, or displaying signs or graphics. Speakers are also reminded to refrain from launching personal attacks against any city or CRA official, staff member, or other members of the public. The chair will rule out of order any person who speaks without being recognized or attempts to address the CRA board from outside the speaker area at the podium. Persons failing to comply with the CRA's rules may also be ruled out of order, and at the discretion of the chair may be removed from the chambers for the remainder of that day's meeting. Finally, CRA members should refrain from engaging a speaker under public comment.
Okay, thank you. First, we'll go with our online speaker. Mr. Randolph, are you there this morning?
If you could please unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, good morning.
Thank you so much. My name is Michael Randolph, and I'm with the West Tampa CDC. Want to give some updates quickly on 3 programs that's coming up. The first program is entitled The State of Black Nonprofit. Only 12% of Black nonprofits operate with at least one paid staff, full-time staff, while over 58% of white nonprofits operate with at least one paid employees. About 78% of Black nonprofits operate a budget of less than $500,000, and nearly 1/3 of Black nonprofits operate $30,000. They're largely made up of volunteers. It's been found that revenue for Black-led organizations, on average, on average is less than 40. Now, on average, Black nonprofits operate less than 24% compared to white nonprofits. Added to this, Black female nonprofits are the least funded. On April the 30th, we're going to have a workshop on how to fund and grow a nonprofit. State of Black business. According to Hillsborough County, Black and brown businesses consist of 50% of the population, yet only account for 5% of the economic growth. On April the 30th, we plan to do a workshop on how to start, operate, and grow a nonprofit. Black wealth. This generation of Black will be the first generation not to leave any wealth for the next generation. Black people spend $1.5 billion a year. That means, in other terms, that's the 8th richest nation in the world. By 2053, Blacks will have no wealth and will be considered a second-class citizenship. On April the 30th, we're going to be doing a workshop called Investment 101, Creating Black Wealth in the Black and Low-Income Communities. This is going to focus on high return on investment as opposed to traditionally going to banks that offer less investment on the dollar. It's going to focus on stocks and bonds and cryptos. So these are the workshops that's coming up and focus on economic development and changing the narrative. Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to share this.
Thank you, Mr. Randolph. Good morning.
This is a binder that I went to a meeting.
State your name for the record.
I'm sorry, Stephanie Pointer. I went to a meeting for MacDill Air Force Base in the last 60 days or so, and this binder was given to me. This binder has the notation that land use objectives 8.3 says support and strengthen the role of MacDill Air Force Base by requiring adjacent properties to be compatible with airport-related activities. But yet, Tuesday, I got a phone call that Live Local was approved for 600 units in the property abutting me. Now, what I gave you is a statute that is in play currently with our legislature in Tallahassee. It's already been approved 112-1. So I would imagine that the governor is going to sign it. And right here it says a proposed development located within a quarter of a mile of a military installation identified as blah, blah, blah. But anyway, may not be administratively approved. Now, this isn't the law yet, but here's my number one problem here. We have a good neighbor notice, and the good neighbor notice is supposed to be sent out for these things. I would like very much for Councilman Carlson to make a motion that Live Local is publicly
Excuse me, Ms.
notified.
Pointer, please refrain from calling out a board member's name.
Okay, I was asking him to do it. Okay, so, if you look at these, it currently says an amendment to the future land use map of the city of Tampa's comprehensive plan. Guess what? Live Local is that. Why wasn't the neighborhood notified? To my knowledge, and I've made a half a dozen phone calls, and I have sent a bunch of emails, the base wasn't notified. Why wasn't it notified? You can't just build whatever you want next to a military installation. Also, here's my big issue. This project was approved on March the 28th. I have sat next to the land use people who approved this. I have talked to them on the phone. I have sent emails to them, and they've responded. I've talked to them casually. Nobody mentioned that I'm an abutting neighbor, that this was here. This project was turned down with 100, 200 less units last summer by you guys unanimously. 200 less units. Now, I want you to see something. They said we're going to do 40% affordable. Look at this crap. Those are one bedroom. They're only making the affordable one bedrooms. So what they're doing is ruling out any families. They are excluding anybody with children, and it's only for 120%. Now I want you to see 120% for one person is $80,000 a year. That's a lot of stinking money. That means that their affordable housing should be $2,000 a month. But here's the problem. We've been hoodwinked, folks. Okay, $1,960 a month, $1,700 a month, $1,799 a month, $1,740 a month. Here's one. This is an old one. It says $2,000. So the bottom line is that we've been hoodwinked, and I'm not happy about it, and you shouldn't be either, because you should know about it.
Thank you. Next speaker. Good morning, Mr.
Mentesnot, Tampa, Florida. You know, it's a shame adult people come in here, y'all tell them they can't exercise their constitutional rights. You can't call people by their names. People got a First Amendment right. You can call anybody by whatsoever you want to, and ain't nothing y'all can do about it. Y'all got people so scared, they sit in the ordinance, and because they don't want to do this. Y'all got them scared and cowards. But let me say this. It ain't nothing wrong in being selfish and conceited. And that's what I am this morning. That's what I've always been for Africa. That's what I've always been for reparations. And I want to tell every last city council member up there today, the most important thing in this city today, right here, right now, I don't care about the homelessness. I don't care about your parks and recreation. I don't care about your rec center, your $54 million rec center. The most important thing today in this city is to clean up how they gave an African woman 30 years prison for not prescription glasses, for apparently shoplifting some shades at old nasty stinking International Mall. How they gave an African woman. It shows that African people have no power in this city. Could you imagine them giving your son or daughter 30 years prison sentence? Say they're a repeat offender. If they're a repeat offender, that means they got some psychological problems. Send them to treatment and rehabilitation the way you send crackers. The way you send white folks to, their drug problem, they done kill their parents and whatever. They had a problem when they were a little child. The most important thing in this city is to clean up. How they gave that little sister 30 years prison. A stinking nasty judge. Allegedly trying to honor what a stinking nasty Ron DeSantis is trying to do. And y'all sitting here, y'all have police awards and everybody. But when the people time to speak, y'all tell them they can't. Y'all want cowards. Y'all don't want resistance. Y'all don't want real people. Y'all want cowards, and y'all want to keep running over African people the way y'all been doing for 624 years. Now, that sisters from this city, clean that up. That's your duty and responsibility.
All right. Next speaker, please.
Go ahead.
Good morning. You want to address your phone?
Please silence all cell phones.
Your phone is on.
Is that Reverend Williams' cell phone?
Yeah, we'll give him time to do that so he won't get confused.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Pastor Frank Williams, located at 1112 East Scott Street. You know, I can understand why the young man's so upset. Because we come up here day after day, week after week, and we get no result. As if nobody give a damn about it. But we give a damn about ourselves. And that's the way it's gonna be. We're gonna keep coming until we get justice. If y'all don't believe in justice for black folk, we're gonna keep coming. And we're gonna get justice one day. God give them justice. You all don't care about us? You wanna know something? God might not care about none of you all. Now, I'm here talk about fair oath. You know, the mayor wants to get credit for everything. We had a meeting down there one night. She didn't even show up. She said she had a more important thing to do than to come down there with a bunch of niggas. But we have to understand, we're going to get justice one way or the other. God give them justice. We're not going to let y'all mistreat us no longer. We don't care who we got to represent us. We represent ourselves. And you know, it's so sad how you all believe in white and black. White step up, black get back, and all that crap. But let me tell you something. God created all of us. God is not prejudiced at all. God is an outstanding God. Want to do good for everybody. But we act like we want to represent a flag than to represent God Almighty. God has got all the power. That flag can't do nothing for me. And he won't do nothing for me. He ain't nothing but a piece of rag. But I tell you one thing, God will do everything for us. All we got to do is have faith in him and ask him to tell him what we need. I know I'm walking on a walker, and you know why I'm walking on a walker? Because of the way y'all treat me. You go to the doctor, how are you? And he want to know how old you are. Well, we can't do nothing for you. They don't tell you outright. Well, we can't do nothing for you. It's trying to take my church down, 1112 Scott Street. I done told y'all about it many times. You think you ought to come down there and help me out? No, y'all give a damn. Don't care. Well, that's a nigga down there. Got a nigga church in the white neighborhood. They say they want to make it a gay neighborhood. But it's so infected with the disease, I don't want to live there myself. But we got to understand, we got to live somewhere. Now they're supposed to come out there and put a roof on my house, 85 years old. The lady asked me, well, how old is this house? And I told her, and she said, well, it's a frame house, ain't it? Said, we don't do frame house. I said, but I'm 85 years old. I can't do nothing for myself.
Pastor Williams, your time is up.
Thank you, I heard you.
Okay.
Thank you, Reverend.
Thank you so much.
You know what? Y'all tell me my time is up.
It
Y'all
is,
need
it
to give
is
me-
up, Pastor Williams, and I know that my aide
Yeah, I
can
know
help you
what you're saying. You don't have,
whatever
I ain't
that
got to argue with you.
Nope, no problem.
You ain't nothing but a...
What? Sir? Refrain?
I could care less about
from inappropriate behavior in the chambers. Pastor Williams, I know that you can talk to Darlene. She's been assisting you with your problems and getting some progress for you, so you can continue to see her about your church and other matters. Thank you so much. Good morning, Ms. Salsina.
Good morning. I'm Linda Salsana. I live at 157 Biscayne, and I'm here this morning to talk to you all about Design Week 2024. Design Week is a creation of events and activities between April 12th and 21st rather, and all of them in Tampa take place in CRA districts. And the reason is our CRA districts are our most interesting neighborhoods. It's downtown, Ybor City, and West Tampa. I'm here to invite you to participate and to share this with your constituents because we're sharing information on the history of these areas, the future of these areas, ways to implement funding projects in these areas. There are walking tours. There's a free film at the Tampa Theater, a walking tour of Water Street. The more people know about their community and care about it, the more they'll get engaged, like you all are, to protect it. So this is, the wonders of technology, thank you. So the premise of Design Week is to engage not only the architectural and design community, but the entire community, neighborhood leaders, neighbors, just interested citizens, people who moved here recently perhaps, who want to know more about the community in which they live and how they can become more engaged. I specifically would invite people to the free events, although the others are inexpensive. The Tampa Theater on Monday night, a film about the future of not Tampa, but any city, and new building materials that are going to create new sorts of cities. And then Friday afternoon, tomorrow at noon, a walking tour of Water Street. So thank you for your attention. Spread the word. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good morning, Dr. Michelle Williams. I'm here to speak briefly about agenda item number 6 and 7. And many moons ago, Dr. King stood on the footsteps of the Washington Monument, and he rendered one of the most powerful speeches that still are woven into the fabrics of America today. And in his speech, he let America know that she had written a check to its black citizens that continuously comes back marked insufficient funds. Insufficient funds are not necessarily monetary money, but insufficient funds on the promises of equality and justice. And we've yet to reach these promises for a check that America has written to the black community for hundreds of years. America, in her stride towards greatness, has often stumbled writing checks of liberty and justice that have come back marked insufficient funds for her black citizens. Despite the lofty ideals enshrined in her founding documents, the reality for many has been a narrative of exclusion, oppression, and neglect. It is a reality marked by the stifling cesspool of stagnant waters, waters teeming with the toxins of lies, corruption, and systemic racism. These waters have flooded the streets of our communities, seeping into the very foundations of our homes, our schools, and places of work. They have poisoned the well from which our children drink, clouding their future with sediments of miseducation, unemployment, and poverty. The currents of these waters have eroded the banks of justice, sweeping away the lives of our sons and daughters, our brothers and sisters, with a cold and ruthless efficiency. Yet, as we stand amidst with these swirling waters, we must remember the power of the dream and the vision that Dr. King had. Now, I understand that there's a program that was set forth for the youth of this community. And I understand that there's some undermining things going on with this said project. And let me tell you something, I don't sell wolf tickets. And every check that I've ever written has never been marked insufficient fund. Just know, I'm not gonna do too much talking at this podium no more. The only language that America has shown to be true that she believes is hitting you in your pocket.
Good morning, Connie Burton.
Good morning.
I'm here to speak on item 1, 6, 7, 8, and 10. One, if you're very serious about capping the downtown CRA and moving it toward taking care of some real needs in our community, maybe we won't continue to hear about aquariums and things that do not specifically have the look of blight in our community, a blight in the downtown area. That money could be utilized. So if you're serious about number 10, I could tell the people in Sulfur Springs that if a CRA is coming your way, what it really means is to gentrify your community. Because all they need to do is look at East Tampa, which is the first CRA in the state of Florida and still have the most blight in this city. Number 8, the Hannah Center will be sufficient right now for all of the staff to do their work there. And number 6 and 7, what I have given you is what continue to be misinformation going out into our community, right? So when they was doing the Martin Luther King event, they said about a wonderful summer job program that's coming into the community. They passed this out during the Martin Luther King event. On that flyer, it talks about the possibility of these are the type of jobs. I don't know that they would be offered. This is what the city offers. But what our community continue to get, because there's such resistance to making a good summer program, when we ask for 72 students to be hired, 72. We can't get past 36. We might get to 50. The CRA laid out its own funding to hire a contractor to deal with 72 children. What's hard about that? What's hard about that? I know the city will be, staff will be given a report. It has moved from one department to the other. That's not our problem. Our problem is ensuring that our children have a quality of life, that they will be able to see the real world of work outside of just picking up paper. On that flyer right there, it had a registration online. If you hit it with your phone, it's not how young people can board for the jobs. It's talking about a survey from last year. This flyer, if the young people tried to attempt to find out where the summer jobs were, it tells them absolutely nothing. We are sick and tired of the BS that continues. 72 jobs is what we want. We have laid out the money through the CRA for it to happen. For it not to happen means that you want to continue to see our children go down this spiral path of destruction. It is on you for this summer, not next year.
That's right.
Good morning. My name is Valerie Bullock. I come to talk about number 6 and 7 on the agenda. When it comes to East Tampa Summer Youth Program, we can get a head start if we start talking right now about next year. We do need jobs. Picking up paper, anybody can do that. We appreciate the money that we got to buy our school clothes with the last 10 years, but we would like our kids to be exposed to jobs that can lead into a career, like IT, art and infrastructure. I heard the councilman last week, he was talking about his relatives and how they were disabled and they were able to get a job, and Mrs. Wynn came up and she gave a report. Oh, we put them in this department, we put them in that department. So that tells me that it already has been done. We'd like those same doors to remain open for the youth from East Tampa. It's more for them to do, and we got a whole year to get it right. And I think we need to start working on it. I believe that if we give our children an opportunity to get a job at a summer as an intern downtown, they might like it. They might get a chance to repeat it the following year, and that might trigger something into them, and they say, I want a career in this field. And if Tampa is going to be the next great city, premier city, which we're planning on being, we have to have opportunities for everyone. We can't just open up a door for certain people and close it for other people. Looking at the CRA in East Tampa looked like to me it's been purposely sabotaged. Yes. That's what it looks like to me. And on item number 7, letting Osea win, putting it under the city, that's a no. We had a distrust of the mayor and the city. If the city was doing right already, we wouldn't need an East Tampa Summer Youth Program. They could get on with the city. So that's a big no for me. It's too much distrust there. And we got to use our East Tampa funds to give it to the city so that they can tell our kids where to work at. No, we got our own money. Stop sabotaging the programs that East Tampa CRA have put in place. If we got the funding already for the kids, 72 kids, and for them to go to different departments, we need to allow that. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. Evidently, it's already been done. So just leave the door open for the youth in our neighborhood. Thank you so much.
Thank you. God bless.
Good morning. Counselor, I have not been sworn. I don't have to do that today?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ken Stoltenberg. I'm a business owner and resident and developer in the Channel District. I'm here to speak on item 2. The Channel District CRA has been amazingly successful, and I think it should be a poster child for what all CRAs should be as far as the revitalization that's happened and the amount of money it's bringing in. And obviously, when it brings in what it does, which is over $11 million this year, the city has a lot of needs, no doubt about it. I would just recommend that 20 years ago when the CRA got started, the largest item from a budgetary standpoint and from a what needed to be done standpoint, the most important item was buying land for open space. The city has done a couple of things, but nowhere near what the plan suggested that it do. About 4 years ago, I came before the CRA board and suggested that the city buy a couple pieces of property. Current staff didn't take that very well, but I'm still here and they're not. I like the current CRA staff that you have now. I think they're quite good, and I'm looking forward to working with them. But I would just say that if you could encourage them to actually buy some more land for open space to get closer to the ULI standards, which we're nowhere near, I think that's more important to do that first and then talk about redirecting some funds wherever they should go, because there are needs, and the Channel District is probably going to make more money than it is going to need. Thank you very much for your time, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. And this will be our last speaker. If there's anyone else, please stand to the side so we'll know. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Black Rose. Honestly, I'm just here to remind you of what is important when it comes to the summer youth program. The youth. They are the most critical component to this. Reducing the youth that is being served by half is only going to be more detriment to these youth. We expect them to be entertained while we're locking up the playgrounds and the sports centers, where some of them are so locked up you have to honk your horn to get the attention of the security to open a gate for you to get in. Like, these kids don't even have access to their own community recreational spaces. We expect them to somehow stay out of drugs, stay out of gangs, stay out of, troublemaking activities, loitering, vagrancy, truancy, but we don't provide anything for them, especially in East Tampa. We need to take the youth seriously. 72 children. And really, we should be upping that number. There are a lot of kids in East Tampa. A lot of youth that needs to make money. We need more programs. This summer youth program shouldn't be this is it. This is what we're going to do for the kids. We should be thinking bigger. We shouldn't be changing things that 2 years ago I was sitting in on CRA meetings while we were coming up with what we're going to do with this youth program. And now here we are still debating it. still putting off the discussions of how we're going to improve the program, make it better, and serve more youth? How does this make sense? How are y'all okay with it? Meanwhile, as has been pointed out, East Tampa is so severely behind, the oldest CRA and still the most blight in all of Tampa Bay, of all of Tampa. How does that make sense? How are any of you okay with this? Y'all need to do something about it, because obviously our pleas are going unheard. Anytime we have programs that are set up for the youth, they get shut down because we don't have the right licensing, or we don't have the right people, or we don't have this, or we don't have that. So what's supposed to happen? The people of East Tampa can't serve our own youth, but neither will the city? Make it make sense. Do something.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Chagret Dawson. As my shirt indicates, I'm a veteran. I used to be a part of the homeowners community before the city of Tampa helped orchestrate the stealing of 4 of my properties. So, but I wanted to talk about what I need your city council to do for me. Because there's this issue of the 7,000 emails that weren't turned over during my discovery process, we're still dealing with that because you're not getting the $10,000. I decided to bring it to the city council. I'm going to narrow what I'm asking you to do. Because I have another set of emails that contain me being referred to as something other than the Chagret Dawson my mother named me, I want the city council to tell them, turn over to Mr. Doss any email that refers to him as something other than Chagret Doss. So if you have him referred to as a sovereign citizen or a nigger or whatever else it is, give them those emails, because I know they're in there. That should be pretty simple for everybody to do. Again, this thing was settled back in 2018. My case was dismissed in my favor after your employee did all that, put all that time, effort, and energy and taxpayers' money into trying to get me convicted for something I absolutely did not do. The judge dismissed it for those reasons. So, again, with that being said, go through those 7,000 plus emails, which is kind of a lot of emails. Find the emails where I'm referred to as something other than Chagret Doss, and if there are no emails that state that, give me a letter saying that as well, and I'll still get the 7,000 emails at some point in time. That being said, you all take care. Shout out to the University of Thomas Jefferson High School.
Yeah. Good morning.
Good morning. Andy Joe Scaglione. As you all know, I've been involved in Channelside, the journey of Channelside since 1983, 41 years. It makes no sense to give the county the remaining 9 years of hard-earned development task base we have created, nor does the county think it's a good idea. More important, we have more opportunities in Channelside. It's not done. We have the port area, we have the Lorton piece, we have the northern end, we have our culture piece there, which is our aquarium. Just like downtown has a Strass, we have the aquarium. Great things happening there. Uncertainty is one of the worst things you can do in the business community or the development community. And by us continuing to talk about closing down CRAs, capping them, it's the worst thing we can do. Capital markets are watching. The capital markets are very, very fragile right now. With inflation and prime rate at 8.5%, the pipeline is going to become less and less, okay? And all the momentum we've had for many years, you're going to start seeing it really, really go down. We don't want that. We are fortunate to have a very talented CRA staff. Therefore, let's not bog our time with unnecessary reports and let them be creative and execute. Lastly, I don't know if I'll see her, but the loss of Nicole Travis will be felt in this city. She has put a great team together. That's the consolidation of this, as great leaders do. They always hire what I call, always strive to hire your replacement. And that's what she's done. She's put a great team in place. She will be lost, and good luck to you, Nicole. But anyway, thank you very much, and y'all have a wonderful day.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Scaglione. That concludes public comment, and now we're going to move forward with our agenda.
Good morning, CRA Board. Cedric
Good
McCray,
morning.
East Tampa and Drew Park CRA Manager. Pleasure to be here with you this morning. I have the distinct honor and pleasure of introducing the Drew Park CAC Chair for their report. Ms. Maritza Astor-Kiza has been a member of the Drew Park CAC off and on for a number of years. They have she is a part of two family-owned businesses in the Drew Park community, one of which has been in place for 40 years, so she's vested in that community. I have the honor of introducing her to provide updates for you on Drew Park CAC and CRA. Ms. Astor-Kiza.
Good morning.
Good morning. Yes, my name is Maritza Astor-Kiza, and thank you for the introduction. Yes, I have been part of the CRA since actually the beginning, founder member. And I do remember when East Tampa was formed, and we followed and learned quite a bit from East Tampa, actually, as they were moving forward to help move forward Drew Park CRA. So I wanted to note that East Tampa did set the pace. What I'm here to say today, first of all, I wanted to say that I heard about something called Design Week, which I think seemed like a great idea, but I'm glad that it seems like we're dedicating some time to the history of Tampa and the CRAs, and I think that's wonderful. Perhaps in the future, Drew Park could be considered. We all know Drew Park has one of the richest areas of history areas with our military base, and not only the military base, but a lot of people started their businesses there, and there are multi-generational businesses that still exist here. It's a backbone of a lot of the economy here in Tampa, from the everyday folks. And there's a lot of history, and we've had history workshops there, in at least one. Councilman Miranda was part of one of them, and there's a lot of history that needs to be captured regarding Drew Park, and it goes beyond the military, just saying that. Okay, moving forward, we have had a transition from Jesus Niños to Cedric, and it's been smooth. We miss Jesus, but we are very happy to have been assigned Mr. McCray. We have a very busy schedule as in Drew Park. Last time I was here, I was telling you we had 3 consultants. And primarily, we were looking at mobility and connectivity and safety concerns for Drew Park. We were also looking at the landscape and safety audit for Grady and Lois, which is a main thorough, especially Lois, avenue for us. And we were also looking at parks, developing the linear park that just made it to the first phase, which is in Tampa Bay, and then we have a neighborhood park, which is really the original idea, I'm thinking 7-10 years ago, to replace the Hunts Park that was taken with the when the airport moved into part of the Drew Park, and we lost the park that the kids had. So the goal has been to give the children, the younger children, something, and the families. So we are moving forward with that. In March, we prioritized the projects, and it was the park for the kids and the safety concerns for connectivity. We do have a lot of people that walk through there. There's a lot of people that work to get the bus, to get to, because we do have our residential side as well as we have our industrial part. And we work really well together. I think it's very unique, and it's beautiful that these two communities work together. So the safety concerns was very important as well. And then also the Lois Avenue and Grady to, make that safe, because once the first design went in, now there's adjustments to be made as to, we have a lot of trucks and semis that go through there, and so it needs some repair. Last meeting here now in April, we were able as a group to approve some recommended funds that will eventually come to you for the connectivity projects. For the safety concerns, as well as for the Lois and Grady Avenue. Our next meeting, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the neighborhood park for the families and the children, and then we'll come back to you to get approval. But we have moved hugely, and we are well on our way. It's very aggressive. There is a lot at the same time happening, so we do appreciate the assistance that the city staff is doing. As you know, we really couldn't do it without it. Most of us are business owners. They're wearing 10 hats a day, and it's even difficult to get to the meetings. So it's moving forward with everybody working together, and it's a lot, and it's great, and it's something to celebrate. There's a really good stuff happening in Drew Park for the betterment of the people working and living there, which is really what our mission should be, and we're on to that. Just wanted to ask you or bring a couple things to your attention. This is the third time, I think, or fourth, I don't know how many times I brought this up, that I feel that there is a traffic issue with Air Cargo Road that feeds into Drew Park and out of Drew Park into Air Cargo Road. There's a lot of racing going on. You know, it's 45 miles per hour feeding into 25 miles per hour. Martin Luther King, I think, is 35. And then it goes into Hillsborough, from Hillsborough into Air Cargo Road. It just makes no sense. There are some traffic controls that can be done to help, you know, the stop signs being taken, you know, from, you know, people rushing to get to Air Cargo or Air Cargo cutting through. I remember that we have traffic from the stadium, all the games, the Yankee games, you know, all that feeds into our, and connecting through and people trying to get through. I've brought this up several times, but frankly, I haven't had anybody take the leadership to help us connect with mobility and actually now construction, because there's a huge facility that the airport is going on, and someone correct me, but I think it's 2,000 or 3,000 employees going in there for a training facility. Somebody's got to be thinking on how that's going to impact us in Drew Park, which are literally across the street. So is this a planned development? Is there a traffic light going on? Are there crosswalks going in? All right, so I'm asking for some help. We are a CRA, and we're having a potential issue coming up to us. We already have an issue with traffic, I believe. So I'm asking, and I'm not asking for anyone to step up today, but I need some leadership, okay, to address this and bring these parties together with us and figure out, you know, what are the plans? Are there any before this project is completed? Okay. I also wanted to point out that there was some restructuring going on with city staff. And I just wanted to bring out that you guys are the CRA, right? We are your CRA advisory. We do a lot of the everyday work to get to you. The real everyday work is done by city staff. There was a restructuring going on, but I don't recall anybody coming to the advisory board to ask their opinion on, on the restructuring, or even explaining to us what the restructuring was about, or why it happened, or what it is. I think that was a missing, because you know what? We might have had a suggestion or two. We might not have. But at the very least, we would have been included and felt included, because you guys are the CRA, we're the CRA advisory, city is contracted, okay? So in the future, you know, please include us when you're making changes that are significantly going to impact how we work. And when we all are giving up our volunteer time, you know, multiply at least my time by whatever, 12, 13, I don't know how long the CRA has been. Of course, I have to go off and on sometimes. That's a lot of time for business people, at least in the Drew Park area, but I know in the other areas as well. East Tampa, for example, I know. And West Tampa, of course, as well. So please include us. And I would like to have a presentation. I believe every CRA should have a presentation of what this new structure is like, and how it's going to work, and be open to some suggestions from us. That's all I'm asking, is to continue to be included, because we are the principal. Anyway, I'm here to say that we have great things going on in Drew Park. We are moving forward. It's wonderful. It's wonderful to see the industrial part work really well with the residential side. It's a unique area, and it's a historical area full of a lot of history, and we're moving forward. we are moving forward in Drew Park, and we are very happy, and we're working well. Any questions?
Any questions? Board Member Clendenin.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Reference your concerns. I know we're in the process of, well deep into the process of reorganization, and that's always difficult. And I apologize for the, if it felt like there was some steps missed, but that's always kind of the problem in government when you're trying to reorganize. Some of the concerns that you expressed, I think that's part of the structure should be where, like, your CRA manager, getting them involved, because they're like a conduit for us. So they, between the CRA, the CAC, and the CRA, and city staff, that's kind of like your ability to find the points of information that you're looking for all of the answers. And then all else fails, if let's say that you're running into a roadblock that doesn't work, then come highlight us. But hopefully you are using your CRA manager in that way, and all the CRAs are using their CRA managers in that way, that they can. And I know this is new, and there's been a big reshuffling, so there's a lot of different faces and all in these CRAs. But that's what we'd ask you to do, is make sure you bring them on board, make sure that they give them the opportunity to get those answers and to report with this to the CACs, and then they'll be briefing us as well, because we have a great relationship with the management team for the CRAs, and I think that's probably the best kind of management model to look at.
See, I understand everything you're telling me, and at least in Drew Park, we have always worked really well with our managers, and they have always responded well, and that's not what my issue was. My issue was we were left out. Okay, and the other thing is, if I had been involved, this is not the first time I've said it here, you'd have to go look at, I don't know, 5 years ago, 6 years, I don't know, whenever I said it, and I've said it individually as well. One of my suggestions would have been is that you all have a liaison.
Well,
to connect back to staff.
Please don't interrupt her. Let her finish.
The liaison is our CRA managers.
See,
and
I don't see it that way.
Yeah.
You see, so that would have been, in a restructuring, I would have said that you guys have someone, just like you have an aide, okay, to connect back to the multiple amounts. It's a suggestion that maybe would not have flown. Maybe it wasn't good, but it still was a suggestion. Because I see that missing, okay, because we present to them, they present to you, you guys yes or no. But there are everyday issues that perhaps, as a CRA board, you need somebody asking for you, to connect back, one person. So what my suggestion, it's just a suggestion. I understand what you're telling me. I still have my suggestion, and it would have not been maybe a good suggestion. Maybe it is a fantastic suggestion. Maybe it's something in the future. But that's a missed opportunity that wasn't heard, is one point. Okay.
Thank you.
Board Member Miranda, and then followed by Board Member Carlson.
Yes.
Thank you, Chairperson. Ms. Cortez, thank you for being here and making your presentation this morning. You and your family have been there for a long time in business, and I appreciate everything you've done. When you look at the road of Cargo Road, I believe that starts to the south at Tampa Bay Boulevard as you meander through all the way out. And then you make a right-hand turn, that's the only way you can go, and you follow it all the way through. There's one light at MLK and Cargo Road, and from there on, it's no other lights until you get to Hillsborough Avenue. However, when Cargo Road was built, there was nothing on the west side of Cargo Road. Now you have from FedEx all the way down for about 2 or 3 blocks, buildings, I believe, and a lot of activity there. And when you get now to Cargo Road in south, I believe that's the location we're talking about, the buildings coming up. I don't know how many people are going to be there, but it is huge. You got 2 or 3 big buildings there that's going to house someone or a lot of someones there in the very near future. So I believe that we ought to start looking at some traffic enhancement, because on Cargo Road in south is going to be a force point of problem, because as soon as you come off of Hillsborough Avenue, you're right on that thing.
Absolutely.
And you might have some problems there. So I can appreciate that. Then as you go down heading south, you got the Tampa Bay Boulevard exit, and that's about it. And MLK exit, I should say, and that's it. Unless you go all the way down, all the way south to Tampa Bay Boulevard. That road has been an extraordinary help to a lot of traffic calming on Hillsborough Avenue. What happens when you take it off of one place is going to be supplemented somewhere else. And we had a great time for some time because there was nothing else being built. Now you have all the buildings coming up around there. In fact, on Coolidge, and MLK. You have some buildings going up. There used to be a parking area for semi-drivers to leave their tractors and trailers, and so they can drive all the week and have 1 or 2 days off and go back on the road. And that was there for many, many years. That's next to the Spectrum building. Now that's gone down, and I see just yesterday I noticed that there's a construction area going there from one block from Coolidge, and I forget the other block's name, where there's already, the blocks are almost to the lineal size. So I don't know what it is, but it's the whole block, from one block to the other, is being built. So things are happening, and I remember when you good folks worked very diligently with the Pryor's administration in the past to fix Lois and Grady with grant monies that we had, and your money's coming in, and it made an entryway into your CRA area in Drew Park. So because of your hard work, yours and all of you involved in that CRA, it has made an enormous progress. However, progress brings other problems, and they're called traffic. And so we have to, you're right, we have to look at this, because at one time I've worked for many years, and I had to take that road for 30 years or so, half a year every day for 5 days a week, and there was no traffic. Now it's a different animal. So I think that you're coming about saying at the right time, because if we don't address it sooner, before or later, we're going to have some problems on the road. But thank you, and I'll try to work with the CRA to get some information to you back.
Thank
Board
you for
Member
stepping
Carlson.
up.
Oh,
Thank you,
yeah.
Councilman Miranda. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Board Member Carlson.
Yeah, I just want to echo what my colleague said and apologize if we miss any steps. It's not our intention, I think, not the intention of staff. When Nicole and Elise took over a couple years ago, they were in triage mode, trying to turn things around, and they also had like 2 or 3 jobs within the city, and they had to make some fast decisions, and we went with them. And if we missed some steps along the way, I apologize. But then they helped bring in Ms. Moody, who is trying to continue, what they did, but also repopulate staff and set up new structures and processes with the help of Nicole and Elise. And so hopefully we won't miss steps going forward. I think you should see a new level of professionalism going forward. But if you, in the meantime, if you and your colleagues want to reach out to us, you're welcome to do that. We're mostly discouraged from attending the meetings because we want to hear from you all, but you all are welcome to invite us or call us or email us. It's not that we're not interested. We are very interested, and I'm interested in that in your area because you're adjacent to the airport. I want to ask you 2 questions. Number one is similar to what Board Member Miranda was saying. I remember in the last airport director, the airport bought a lot of land in the eastern side of Drew Park, or the western side of Drew Park, eastern side of the airport. I wonder what you see as happening with that now. I haven't heard any updates on that. And number 2, if you and your fellow advisory board meeting members are successful, how would you describe Drew Park in 20 years? If you're 100% successful, you're able to do all the things you want to do, build out the vision you have, how would you describe it, especially as being different than other neighborhoods or parts of the city or the region?
I would envision in kind of based in very simple words, to continue the light industrial area that we have, run by family-owned businesses, multi-generational businesses, new family-owned businesses to start their own generational family-owned history and legacies. I think that's precious. I think it's a major contribution to the city. I think it's important that there be a space for these types of businesses and these types of businesses that are family-owned mostly. I envision that to continue, to preserve that, to make it better, just like with the projects that we're working on and future projects, because these aren't the only ones that need to be addressed. So I think it's great that we have a CRA for TIF funds to be able to address this, because prior to the CRA, it had been 40 years since any capital improvements in Drew Park. 40, except I believe a project with something small with stormwater because it was an emergency base. With the CRA, we've had a major, Councilman Miranda was saying about Lois and Grady, that also included a stormwater project. So I envision that to continue preserving this area alongside with the residential side. Residential over here, industrial over here, and everybody working and living together, supporting each other, feeding into each other. That's what I see in 20 years. I know you had a first question, and I do not remember it. If you'd like to ask it,
It was
please.
just about the airport land and if there are any new plans for what they're doing. As administration changed over, I don't know what the update is on their plans. I know CAE was looking at going into part of that land on the, across the fence, but.
Have no knowledge of that.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
And anytime you want to give me a tour, I'm happy to do it. I'm sure my other colleagues would do it. But
We'd love to
we're
do
all
that.
very interested in, you know, in what you're doing. Thank
We
you.
appreciate that. We will take you up on it. Thank you.
Okay.
Anything else?
Yeah,
Well,
thank-
as I was, excuse me, as I was reminded as when I was coming up here and I said, we are under a tornado warning, and someone told me it's a slight possibility. Thank you, it was you, in the elevator or in the parking lot. I would like, appreciate putting me forward so I can get out before there's a severe tornado warning. So thank you for your time. Anything else?
Yeah, I just would like to say thank you so much for your report. It's actually the first one where it wasn't, you know, the fluff and the wonderful, amazing things happening in Drew Park. You expressed some concerns, starting out even with Design Week. The person that came before us did say that, you know, every CRA was included. I'm looking at their calendar. That doesn't appear to be so, that Drew Park is not included in this particular calendar, or at least it doesn't stand out. So even pointing out something like that is very important. If mobility is listening, there also sound like there were some concerns and issues there that should be addressed right away. I agree with Councilman Carlson. Any invitation to tour Drew Park is welcomed by me as a board chair, and I thank you for your presentation and its transparency, because you were able to say it publicly, so even your constituents in Drew Park, who cares about Drew Park, could hear what you had to say, staff could hear what you had to say. Everything is not perfect, and you had the courage to stand before us and tell us the great things that's happening, but also, you know, your concerns. So thank you for your report.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Have a good day. Be
Okay.
safe.
Okay. Moving along.
Good morning, Courtney Orr, CRA Manager for Downtown Core and Non-Core. I'm going to be updating the PowerPoint presentation that was delivered beforehand. We found a computation error in the 75% off, or 75% contribution column. So Morris has those updated PowerPoint presentations to pass around, and then also just some clarifying language I thought would be helpful.
Thank you.
So I'll go through and I'm going to broadcast it here. Okay, so for item number 1, we're going to be discussing downtown CRA. And it was a motion made by the board, this board, to have staff come back and discuss the commitments, funding commitments that are already in place, as well as the possibility of a contribution reduction. There's just some background data on downtown CRA, is that it does sunset in 2043. There is no contribution from the county. It is all fully provided by the city. And then I want to provide commitments that you are aware of, that this board has motioned in regard to funding agreements, for instance. And then budget, I'm using 11% increase because that is what the budget office is using for fiscal year 25 projections for CRA revenue. So on this slide, you will see the commitments that are currently in place. SPP, Tampa Convention Center, the STRAS funding agreement, Tampa Museum of Art, Tampa Theater, Gasworks, and I just wanted to point out that Gasworks will have monies put into the TIF, and then there is a reimbursement that we will be giving back for the public realm infrastructure.
affordable housing, and this again, sorry, this is fiscal year 24 to 33, so that span of time. So we projected out at the 30% of the TIF revenue for affordable housing. That's calculated there. Tampa Union Station, we've already paid a little money out, so we're still committed to $4 million for that renovation. Separately is the art installation item of $750,000. Kid Mason Park renovations, the commitment we have there, it's undergoing, should be completed in late summer. Herman Massey Park, we've committed to $2 million. We will send out a bid very shortly to determine what it is that the actual construction will cost, but we are projecting $2 million at this point. Jackson House, we've committed $1 million, and then the historic streetcar expansion, $5 million. So those are our total commitments that we've forecasted for the downtown CRA. And then on this sheet, I have what we are anticipating in regard to asks that are coming forward to the CRA board. So there's the Franklin Street streetscape. Again, all these are TBD because we aren't 100% sure what those costs will be. But Harbor Island Bridge, wayfinding fabrication and installation, you've already approved concept 1 for that sign. Now we have to do the fabrication, installation, and maintenance bid. Historic streetcar operations, which is something we already do on an annual basis in 3 separate CRAs. Transportation infrastructure, any work in that realm we must do. Curtis Hickson Park, just above and beyond upkeep for Curtis Hickson Park, and Kylie Gardens, and then North Downtown planning. That is something the Tampa Downtown Partnership's undertaking that you've heard about, and that, you know, we don't really quite know yet what will come out of that study. And so here is the math gymnastics. So you'll see on the first line, 2024, just keep in mind that 65 million is including rollover funds. So that's why it looks like a sizable amount of money, because we do know what the rollover funds were from fiscal year 23. So 65 million. And then with that other sheet, other slide I showed earlier with the committed amount, so we've taken that out of that figure. We did not adjust 2024, assuming that there would be no changes in 2024. If there were any changes, it would likely happen in the next fiscal year. So that's when you'll start to see the mathematics of contribution reduction. So in that first column, it's what we anticipate coming in at a 95% contribution. So that's our projected TIF revenue on an annual basis at the start of October 1. Our committed values, these are what are locked in as far as funding agreements, what we know we're committed to providing in the way of funding. The third column is what we are reducing to a 75% city contribution, and I just wanted to point out, because we don't know what the other agencies that do contribute, not to downtown, but to Channel District, which is item number 2. But we did not include the mathematics of reductions of any other agencies that contribute to the TIF, like the county and the port. So, but for downtown, this is the 75% city contribution, so a 25% reduction. And then the final fourth column is 50%.
Excuse me,
We can sit on this slide for a minute.
Courtney. Board Member Clendenin has a question for you.
Thank you. Just for clarity, so people understand, the numbers that you're presenting would be less because of the county and the port contributions would have to be taken out of that as well, correct?
Downtown, the county does not contribute any increment to downtown except for the Water Street project. That is the only thing that counts.
That's what I was confused with what you were saying, because so the county, so this would actually be accurate figures. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I was referencing Channel District. Channel District is number 2, item number 2. It's a different scenario.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Excuse me, Courtney. Board Member Carlson.
No, are you finished? I want to speak when you're finished. I don't want to.
Oh yeah, this is my final slide. We can just sit on it and then.
Okay. Board Member Carlson.
I just wanted to make a few comments. We've been talking about this for several years, and I think we all probably know what we're gonna do on this, but, and so we should probably just vote, see what we're gonna do. But to reiterate something that Morris just said, slide number, I don't know what the numbers are, number 2, where it talks about background, it talked about how we don't get money from the county, but as Morris just said, we get money from the county on the Water Street project, or SPP. Can you go back a couple slides, please, to the current commitments? There's been a lot of talk about, could you slide it over a little bit? I think it's cut off. Thank you. There's been a lot of talk about the size of certain investments versus others. The SPP, which is Water Street, that was made years ago, prior administration, prior CRA board. But that total, there's 15 million left of the city's commitment, and it says 50 million total, but that's only the city's commitment. So the total commit was 100 million. And so you put that 100 million in context of everything else. Then by far, that's the largest investment to date. It dwarfs everything else. Second is the convention center, and that's not including the stuff we paid in the past. So that says remaining 33.7 million. And then you can look at the others. The others, Straz Center, Tampa Museum of Art, Tampa Theater, those are all city-owned properties, of which, for the most part, we're paying 25%, and then the private sector is matching. Tampa Union Station and Tampa Theater, we're paying a higher percentage because they don't generate as much revenue. But also they're facilities that the public participates in. The big one that's on here, though, is affordable housing. And am I correct? That's not a commitment. That is based on the motion that we made for 30%. And so if you go to the next slide, so 143 million, is that over 20 years or 10? 10. So let's say that's 14 million a year. If you go to the column 20, so you see that if we took out 25% or 50%, it's negative for the first 3 or 4 years. But if you put that 14 million back in, we're not negative. And so we can move that money out, 50% or 25%, we can move that money out, and we can spend on anything we want. We can still spend on downtown. We can still spend it on whatever we want to spend in downtown. We're not restricted. Right now, we're restricted. We can only spend it in downtown and only on certain kinds of things. If we take it out with the county's approval, then we can spend on anything we want. We can spend it in Sulfur Springs, where it would take forever to generate money for a CRA. We can spend it in New Tampa, around the USF area. We can spend it in East Tampa. We can spend it on roads in South Tampa, which badly needs it. We can spend it anywhere we want. We can spend on affordable housing, and my argument is that affordable housing is many times more expensive in downtown than it is anywhere else. In an ideal world, we would spend money on affordable housing, but if we could get 10 times more units for the same $143 million, I'd rather get more units, because right now we need units, not just spending somewhere. So I think the big issue with the downtown CRA, there's really no more slum and blight. Frankly, there's more slum and blight parts of South Tampa. Everybody thinks all of South Tampa is rich with millionaires. It's not. There's lots of poverty and lots of places where there's slum and blight. And it's not fair that the rest of the city is subsidizing downtown. This is not downtown's money. It is the money of the rest of the city. Even East Tampa is helping to subsidize downtown. It's not fair. We know that we've had crime issues. We need to hire more police officers. We need more firefighters. We need more fire stations. With the increase in money that's trapped in these CRAs, downtown is not paying its fair share of any of those services. And we need to change it so the rest of the city is not subsidizing. It's not fair that parts of the city have East Tampa outside of the new $100+ million park. The parks are falling apart, and we need to do something about it. South Tampa, the roads or parks are falling apart. I would make a motion later to either cut 50 or 25% starting in 2027 or 2028. If we don't do that, we need to at least pass a motion to say we're not going to spend any more money, Because if we're gonna wait 4 years because we've already allocated money, and remember, if you put back in the housing money, they're not negative. But if we're gonna wait 4 years, we should at least not commit not to spend any more money so that it's not taken up.
Thank you. Board Member Maniscalco, followed by Board Member Hurtak, and then Board Member Vieira.
Thank you very much. For the Kid Mason Park renovations for that structure, was that all funded by this CRA, or did any come out of the general fund, do you know?
I know what our contribution is, I'm not sure what the city's contribution is.
Okay, no, I'll get the answer. Is the Kid Mason improvements, was that all funded by CRA, or did some money come out of the general fund?
Some money did come out of the general fund, but I'm not sure the exact amount.
Okay, that's fine, I don't need the exact amount, I was just curious because of something that I heard months ago, but it doesn't matter. But in regards to putting a cap on the downtown CRA, as Councilmember Carlson was saying, reducing it by 25 or 50%, because we, as a city, contribute all that money. It's not like what would be coming up with the Channelside or the Channel CRA, where the county is it's a totally different scenario, correct? And I know you're going to get into that. So, in regards to Councilmember Carlson's comments, I understand reducing the downtown CRA so we can free up some money and spend it elsewhere in the city. Regarding Channelside, it's just a different scenario because of the county's involvement. But then again, the downtown CRA, I think, is the wealthiest of all the CRAs and has the most money and I believe the most uncommitted. And, we have more leeway with that. And I appreciate what Councilmember Carlson or Board Member Carlson said regarding, well, we can put that in other parts of the city. I know in the agenda we're talking about Sulfur Springs. It takes time to generate revenue, in a new CRA, whereas you would have this money more readily and quickly available to make investments at a faster pace. So that's really it. Thank you very much.
Board Member Hurtak.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ms. Orr, for this presentation. I really do appreciate it, especially the numbers, and thank you for having it in advance. It was really helpful to research beforehand. Mr. Massey, I have a question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
When we go forward, and if we decided to reduce a contribution and we go to the county, can the county then ask for some of that tax money back?
Yes, I mean, to kind of preference all these presentations, there's an interlocal agreement between the city, county, and the Community Redevelopment Agency that establishes the terms and conditions for the existing CRAs. They basically say we cannot change contribution levels, expand the boundaries of the CRA, or extend the term of any CRA without the county and city also approving to those, because that affects their tax base and the current agreement. Once if the board decides they want to move forward with any of these requests, we are going to have to go to both the city and the county and ask them to reopen the interlocal agreement, which means that virtually it becomes a negotiation. And so I don't want the board to be surprised that just because the board wants to ask for something does not mean the county is not going to ask for something in return, potentially, primarily.
But right now, the agreement we have is that the county has given up their right to tax money within this downtown area.
They contribute, they take all their taxes from the downtown. They do not contribute to the TIF, the downtown at all, except for the Water Street project, and there's a special agreement between the county, city, and the CRA that relates to Water Street. And they've agreed, the county's agreed to fund up to 50% of the public infrastructure improvements for Water Street, the Water Street only up to a $50 million cap.
Then, once this downtown CRA closes, what will happen to the funding?
Once the CRA sunsets, then the TIF goes away, and then the revenues go back to the general fund of the city, basically.
Okay, so right now we're getting all the TIF. If the county were to ask for money back, we could lose. So basically, if we get 20 million, if we cut it by 20 million, the county could ask for 10 million back, or?
Well, the county, no. let me kind of clarify it. Downtown, the county contributes nothing. So if we ask to amend the agreement so that the TIF contribution from the city is reduced, that's not going to affect the county in any way regarding downtown at all. But because it's part of a larger agreement, they could ask for other things potentially to give us that right.
So they would get, yeah, they could get their tax money back. Okay. I really, really, really don't like hearing the word "but" when it comes to affordable housing. Affordable housing is a huge issue, and everyone should have the right to live everywhere in this city. We need affordable housing in downtown. I have no problem with $140 million going toward it. It's very important. We need people to be able to live downtown and work downtown. It's absolutely critical. I would in no way support any reduction to affordable housing within the downtown core. There is slum and blight downtown. North downtown, I just had a meeting with the partnership. There is absolutely slum and blight in downtown. And in no way will I support a reduction of the downtown CRA because of that. Because we're talking about two things that are critical in my belief, which is affordable housing and the slum and blight that still exists. And if that's how we're gonna make that happen, off the backs of affordable housing, I'm not okay with it.
Thank you, Board Member Hurtak. Board Member Vieira, followed by Board Member Miranda, and then back to Board Member Clendenin.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. You know, I've always supported this in the past. I'll support some version of it today. We hear a lot of things. All we're asking to do is to merely start talking with the other side about certain ideas. There are other things that are going to be proposed today, and I don't think unless if the idea is just an abomination, anything hurts to talk. I've voted for this before. My big challenge with this is, and I've had some talks with staff on the history of this issue, is that we're not going to get any benefit from this for 4 or more years. That's what bothers me a lot, because this has been on the table, and I'll go through this since 2020. This CRA has never voted down capping the downtown CRA. We never have. We have Channelside. I voted against that for the reasons I'll talk about whenever that comes up. Downtown CRA, nothing's free in life. There's always some gray, but I think the benefit outweighs the detriment of some reasonable cap on the downtown CRA. Channelside, we give up a lot there, as I know we'll discuss. Over the last few years, we've made a lot of commitments in downtown CRA. Many, some that I voted for, some that I voted against. We voted for Kid Mason, proud to support that. Invested $1 million in the Jackson House, whenever we can spend that, proud to support that. Voted for the first $15 million to the Museum of Art, yes. Voted against $10 million. Voted against $25 million for the Strass Center, which came up about maybe 2.5, 3 years ago or so. I checked with staff on the history, because again, I wanted to make sure that what I'm saying is true. And the last time that we voted on capping the downtown CRA was, I think it was August 13th of 2020. It was a motion by Councilman Carlson. I seconded it. He's kind of always supported this, that the CRA staff be requested to come back before the CRA board to present their ideas on how to use the money that would go into the general fund of the city, placed a cap on downtown CRA. It passed 4-3. We never saw it after that. So my frustration comes that we have spent years and years putting funds in downtown on investments, again, some that I vote for, some that I vote against, right? That aren't going to go into neighborhoods, and here we are going, okay, now let's do it after we've spent all this money, and city folks aren't going to see the benefit of that for another 4 years. I believed in it 4 years ago. I believe in it here today, but let's do something to get this thing rolling forward. I do support a downtown CRA. I always have. My district, District 7, has no CRAs. I get heat. I took heat in my first campaign saying I supported downtown CRA. I still do, right? But don't stretch a double into a home run. And I think it's good to scale it back just a little, as Councilman Carlson has proposed again today here, right? To have some of those funds going to other parts of the city. My frustration that I wanted to voice is that we could have done that a while ago. I do believe the votes were there, and instead we chose to go other ways. And we're suffering because of that, right? If we believe that we have to be good stewards of funds and things that we spend in the CRA, we have to measure it as to whether or not they could go in other parts of the city. Well, we've made those investments, right, to the detriment of other areas if we believe that. So again, I will vote for something today, a 25% cap, something of that nature. I'm just frustrated in something like this that we're not gonna get the benefit of it until probably when there's another presidential election coming forth about 4 years from now. That frustrates me. And I want to express that frustration because that really, really does bother me. But again, like I have done before, like a majority of us have done before, I will vote for some version of this today. I do think that's reasonable. We have to invest in downtown. No thriving city is going to be truly thriving without a residential and a robust downtown. I think that's pivotal. But again, here, we don't give up county dollars like we do with Channelside. So that's a discussion that I'm glad to have to explore the gray. Are there going to be some downsides to this? Inevitably, there will be. I'm sure there will be. Heck, maybe not. But I don't think there's anything wrong with talking about it. So that's why I'll be supporting some sort of motion here today. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Board Member Miranda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it very much. I was thinking just exactly how Board Member Hurtak was speaking about. When you look back, history will tell you what the future is going to be, in a way. And downtown had everything, including grocery stores before all these hoopla, and you had Marston's Cafeteria, you had Sears in the corner, and down the street you had, in fact, the first building that was built was way back in the 70s, which is that real nice looking ugly building called the State Building right next to the expressway. And it's been modernized lately. Across the street from what? Used to be the Army Navy store. It's supposed to be affordable housing. You cannot have any area of any size without having mixed race, mixed color, mixed income. That's why it's very important to do exactly what board member brought up earlier, Hurtak, that you gotta have affordable housing component in everything we do downtown that has to do with CRA dollars. That's the only way you're gonna have a community, a city that thrives. You just can't have one color and one income. I'm not gonna vote for that town. I can tell you this, when you look at the audience now, the aquarium was doing terrible years ago. Why is it doing so great now? Well, the new leadership is one. Just as important is the people coming down to visit Tampa as a tourist town. There was no sidewalks in the 60s and 70s because they used to roll them up. There was no one downtown. The convention center was a big loser, a drain on the city's money directly until what? The Hyatt opened downtown. That was 25 years ago. It seemed like it was yesterday. And now the Hyatt spurred other hotels and other hotels. Now you got enough hotels to do what you want to do. But you got to have a substance of different characters, different income. That way you can get transportation started. We're not going to have a transportation system if everybody's of the same income level. It'll never happen. So you must have employees live where they work. If you want to stop doing what we've done historically, abuse nature. And these are the things that we don't talk about. But when you look at these things and you look at the bigger picture, not for today and not for tomorrow, but for many years to come, we have got to change the way we do things, or we can't succeed. You can't expand the expressway every 5 years, one more lane. We'll all be living under it. So these are the things that I see that are negative, that I think we can fix, but you got to do it a piece at a time. And this is one area we have an opportunity to do it, and if we don't do it, shame on us. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Yes, thank you. Board Member Clendenin wants to return to the mic, and you want to return to the mic?
This is my first time. I just had a question about the slide.
Yeah, it's okay.
I'm so glad I was able to speak after Councilman Miranda because I kind of echo a lot of what he said. But it's interesting listening to all the perspectives because I draw a little bit from every single person, even the ones that I don't necessarily agree with the conclusions. We all come at it from a different perspective, and we see the same. We kind of see different elements of this, and then we draw our own conclusions. Or, the finality of it. What I look at is it's interesting. This slide is up here because 24, 25, 26, and even 27 is a minimal amount of money. So we don't really start getting into the revenue, really big revenues enhancements until we get 5 years in, and this thing sunsets at 33. So we're not talking about that many years. And echoing again what Councilman Miranda said and Councilwoman Hurtak said, if anybody's not seeing unmet needs in downtown, their eyes are not open. I mean, you go through downtown, northern downtown area. Clearly we have some really significant unmet needs there. It's no secret that I'm passionate about expanding the streetcar system because I think that's going to be transformative. It's also going to it'll be a major investment that will return money back to the city. I don't foresee us being able to do that without some significant CRA contributions. So that's really about the actual construction of the infrastructure is not on that list. I was looking at the example of projected projects. Some of those things I don't quite get. I'm not really familiar with what's happening with Harbor Island, but I see other things that are not there. Councilman Miranda discussed about, we own the aquarium. It's aging. It's going to need some improvements. Yeah, well, but I'm talking about, because we're going to go into the Channelside, but about these unmet needs. The convention center. Our convention center is aging, and it's going to need expansion. So we're going to have to start looking at that. Somebody's going to have to pay for it. I mean, if we're going to start looking at those type of improvements, somebody's going to have to pay for it. It's just to keep up with it, and also and I think if you look at the numbers, the convention center is a positive fiscal impact on our budget, but we have to invest in it to keep it viable. You and I have had conversations about the downtown streets. Marion Street is not on here. Marion Street is something that we're going to have to invest in because Hart is transforming, really abandoning some of that usage. That is a huge area that could be redeveloped and again, create a tax base that will return that investment. So it's where we have to invest in it so that we get the return on the investment. It could be a great place for housing and in the city of Tampa. There's a lot of unmet needs. I think this conversation is I love the fact, I agree with Councilman Vera. It's good and Councilman Carlson, it's good to have this conversation, but in the end, we're not there yet. This is like building a house that you have 3 walls and half a roof and saying we're done. The house isn't finished. We've got to finish the house, and that's what I would say. So I'm not going to support this today. In a couple of years, maybe we can look at it again as we see more money come in and some of these unmet needs are met. We can reevaluate, but right now I don't think it's time.
Thank you. I just want to have a couple of comments myself. And not necessarily, you're the manager. Director Moody, can you come up and stand up here as well? Because I want the public to understand that the CRA staff works.
Thank you.
Not just in the moment, but there are long-term plans and there are already things set in place and funding for things in the downtown area. I think does it go to 2043 or
43.
Yes, it's 40.
Just a 10-year projection.
Right, that's the 10-year, but it is in 2043. So I wanted to just make sure that was recognized by everyone that's listening. We have plans for things in downtown because there is slum and blight and opportunity that still exists. And affordable housing is number one. We have to have a mixed, diverse folks of people living in downtown. And the only way that we can do that is through the support of the CRA. Before you say something, Director Moody, Attorney Massey, the interlocal agreement, if we decide that we wanted to reduce money within this CRA, the interlocal agreement is with the county, right? There's no guarantee that they would actually give us any funds back. They can go in a whole nother direction, am I correct?
Again, downtown, the county does not contribute.
Right.
So they
Okay.
would not be giving us funds back, but we would have to go and ask the county to amend the agreement. And this agreement covers all the redevelopment areas, not just downtown. And it's interlocal, I should point out, not only with the county, it's with the city as well. So it's a tri-party interlocal.
Would you say that could be a risky situation for us, considering how conservative the county commission is right now? They've slashed affordable housing. They constantly question the arts. Wouldn't we be putting ourselves in danger if we renegotiated an interlocal agreement with them?
There's no telling what the county might ask in return for a request to amend the interlocal. Obviously, we would not necessarily have to agree to what they're asking for, and we could stop negotiations. That's one way we could handle it if we didn't like what they asked for. But I cannot tell you what the county might request. I know the county is, like the city, has a lot of needs, capital needs, resurfacing roads in South County, building new roads in South County, expanding their utility system. And so by dedicating part of their tax revenue to other CRA areas, not downtown, but to the other CRA areas, they may ask us to relook at the percentage that they have to give to those areas. I can't guarantee what their ask might be, but that would be a guess.
Okay, thank you. And over to you, Ms. Moody. In any form or nature in doing that, how would that disrupt all of the work that we've asked you all to do as staff toward the future of downtown and the CRA and what we're currently doing?
Thank you. Appreciate it, and thank you, Manager Orr, for leading the presentation. And, you know, when we look at this, especially the affordable housing commitment and something that we can contribute to and really make a difference in downtown, you know, we're looking at the millions of dollars, but it's really looking at the potential for development. And if we can incentivize a few $1 million for billions of dollars of investment, when the CRA does come to a sunset point for downtown, the idea is that the TIF revenue and the ad valorem would be so great that it would benefit the general fund, benefit the entire community at large. So that's really where the CRA can play a role, is to incentivize these types of developments and turn, you know, these millions into billions. We talked about the North End Vision Plan. The city of Tampa owns a lot of property in downtown, so we do hold the key to a lot of opportunities around surface level parking lots, some of the cultural institutions that we've supported. So there is a lot of potential. And in the last meeting, we heard the downtown redevelopment plan consultant, Kittleson and Associates, come talk about key priority areas. They have 11 different themes, so it really speaks to the potential in the projects that can happen in downtown. I'll also be teeing up a few motions in my director's report around Franklin. We talked about Marion Street, the North End, and also just all of the potential that once we settle this conversation, we know that developers will come to us and want to work with us. But when I look at this and I look at the millions, I'm thinking about the billions of potential here. And as we continue the discussion, I do have a copy of the TIF contributions for the city and the county. And I think it's important to also understand, if we do sunset downtown, they can go and reduce their contributions in other districts. So that's where what we talk about when we talk about the interlocal as a tri-party agreement in totality. So we're happy to have those discussions, but understanding that they could go look at other districts and renegotiate the terms there.
Thank you so much. I want to make sure, do you want to say anything, Board
Yeah,
Member
real quick.
Maniscalco? And then we're going to circle back to Carlson and then Hurtek, is fine? Or you had your light on first? Okay, Hurtek and then Carlson.
So in regards to the cap percentages, we're looking at 75 and then 50%. But in the first column, it says revenue at 95% contribution. Why don't we look at smaller increments, like 90%, 85%, so it doesn't impact the affordable housing, it doesn't impact, because once you see 2025 and 2026 at 75%, it's minus 8.3 million, minus 5.7 million. When you add that up, it's a lot of money, but where can we be at where we're not in a negative? Because it goes, for 2025, 95% is 30.2 million. Once you get to 75%, now we're minus 8.3. Where can we be at that we don't go into the negative, where we're taking away from housing, taking away from, but at the same time freeing up some money that can be used in other parts of the city? Like, is it 90% contribution, 88%, 85%? Where is a safer number where we're not just going, you know, full force, 25% less or to 50%?
For sure. That's a great question. And the numbers that we're looking at are minusing the commitments, not necessarily the potential projects that will come up. But what you're asking is kind of doing it in a more incremental way of maybe 5%, 5%. We're totally open to the discussion and happy to have it with you all. But any type of change would open up that interlocal agreement. So I think that's really what's on the table, is do we want to open that up? And like Attorney Massey said, it could start with discussions and then see where they go. And then it's really a back and forth agreement. But that's definitely an idea that we could test out with the financial analysis, that what revenue would not put us in the red right now.
Because what I'm thinking is, in item number 10, a potential Sulfur Springs CRA, let's say that's created and that's done, how many years will it take to generate money? Well, we can say we free up $5 million with a small percentage. How much time would it take and put that towards other parts of the community, instead of creating a new CRA where it'll take years and years to generate $1 million, $5 million, whatever it is. That's what I'm just saying. How can we move quickly?
Yep.
So,
It can take a while. It really depends on the nature of that district and what type of development's coming online to adding to that increment value. When the CRA is established, the tax base is frozen at that year, and then it depends on the type of development and increments that generate that revenue. So it does take some time. It's taken Central Park several years, and now they've just reached their $1 million benchmark. So it can take 10 years to get to a
whereas if
workable
we
revenue.
take it this route, we can get to $1 million quicker, you know, whatever the amount is. So,
Yeah.
okay.
For
Thank you.
sure, and it would be returned back to the general fund, and as we were doing research on these motions, in the October 2020 motion that was voted on but did not move forward, the motion was for staff to come back and make recommendations on how it could be used in the general fund, and we as CRA staff cannot make recommendations on the general fund, so that is the historical context of that.
Board Member Hurtak. Thank you. The one other thing that we haven't talked about here is that 2027 is when we all leave. I mean, some of us can run for reelection, but we're done. And I also don't believe in hamstringing the next board. I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's appropriate. We can hamstring ourselves, but I don't believe in hamstringing the next group that comes along, because we have already committed this. This is money that this board has committed. I believe in that strongly. We can't cut that. We have signed contracts. But I don't want to hamstring the next board. Thank you.
Board Member Carlson.
Just a few comments, and then I have 3 possible motions. Number 1, to the comment my colleague just made, all this does is it moves the money out to the general fund, and by charter, we sat on the charter review committee, but by charter, city council decides where the money goes. So if we have 5 votes, we can send it wherever we want. And future city councils can send it where the money will still be there. It's not like the money's not going to be there. This is not the same as others where we're getting county money and we're going to lose it. This is city money, and it's the choice is whether we can only spend it in downtown or we can spend it everywhere. And if you set up the downtown projects versus projects anywhere else in the city council can make the decision about where they want to spend it. If their priority's downtown, they can spend it there. It's not for or against downtown. It's just giving city council and the administration options. Number 2, it was said, but this is still 2043. There aren't any commitments for the last 10 years. So you're talking about huge amounts of money for that 10-year period that future councils are going to be from 2033 to 2043. Future council will be able to make, even if we cut it by half, it'll still be $200 or $300 million that they'll be able to spend at that point. I'm absolutely 1,000% against developer subsidies. The whole reason I suggested spending money on city-owned property is because of that $100 million that was given to developer, great solutions. The public despises subsidizing developers. There is not a case where you can accurately say economically that you spend money and you get a return because of the taxes. Because look at Midtown, they got no subsidy. It's not fair, it's against capitalism, it's against free markets, and I don't believe in developer subsidies at all. And we're gonna if we end up talking about developer subsidies in the future, I think we're gonna hear a lot of feedback from the public. In 2020, yes, I made the motion first to cut Sunset Channel District. That I think was voted down 6-1. And then I made the second motion because we ran out of time to bring back downtown. I didn't schedule it until now because I didn't think I had the votes. Sounds like I don't have the votes still, but because the reason why it was never scheduled 4 years ago is because the Channel District one failed. And I figured based on reading the line like I do now that we didn't have the votes. If I thought I could have done it, then I would have. The interlocal agreement, we have to approve any changes. It's not like the county's gonna get it and make changes and we're not gonna be a party to it. If they wanna change something else, they have to bring it back to us. And if we don't like it, we say no. So if we propose something and they say, oh, we're not gonna let you have that unless we change something else, we just say no. It's up to us. It's, as they said, a 3-party agreement. If we move the money out, we can still spend it on downtown housing. We can spend it on downtown parks. We can spend on anything we want in downtown. It's up to us to make the decision. The thing is, do you have confidence that if it was put up against housing in other parts of the city, that we would still have 4 votes? If you think we are, that it's worth that, then it will still survive. Next is economic development in the modern era is about neighborhoods, not about downtowns. People are moving out of neighborhoods. Some of the people that moved here in the last few years are moving out because they don't like that we don't have sidewalks or have broken sidewalks. They don't like that we have roads that look like they're from a third world country. They don't like it that our parks are falling apart. And I'm talking about South Tampa. I'll take you all on a tour of some of the roads in South Tampa. I've been to 101 countries, and they're the worst I've ever seen in my entire life anywhere. It's not acceptable. And we know that we need affordable housing and other things. We need to move the money out. And all it does is it gives us options of what to do with it. Most importantly, the public absolutely will not accept a tax increase. And so if we have this money up against all the projects in the city, not just downtown, it will help us to alleviate tax increases because we can move it around. We need affordable housing, we need police protection, we need fire protection, we need road repair, sidewalks, all kinds of things. What we need to do is look at it citywide. With that said, I don't know what the right motion to make is, and it'll probably fail. I'll make a motion for 50%, then I'll make a motion for 25%. If both of those fail, I'll make a motion to do no new spending for the next 4 years, at least above a 50% cap, because the next council, if we keep promising money in the future, the next council is going to have the same problem we have. So the first motion I'll make is to ask staff to go back to the county to ask for a 50% cut in the downtown CRA money from 2028 on. I put 2028 on. If somebody wants to change it to earlier, we can, but from 2028 on takes away the argument that it's going to be upside down in the next 4 years.
Is there a second on that motion? Okay, motion fails.
Second motion is to propose that CRA staff ask the county to consider a 25% cut in the starting in 2028 of the downtown CRA.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Board Member Carlson, second by Board Member Vieira. The discussion by Board Member Miranda, followed by Board Member Clendenin and Vieira.
Maybe I'm confused a little bit, but I've heard Mr. Massey say 2 or 3 times the county got no interest in downtown CRA.
But the percentage contribution of the city is set forth in the interlocal. So for us to reduce our percentage contribution, we have to amend the interlocal.
But they don't have any money as far as giving us any money.
No,
correct?
other
I
than
wanna make
Water,
that
other
clear.
than Water Street.
I understand. Thank you very much.
Well, that's kind of what I want to clarify, because Councilman Maniscalco said something. I want to make sure everybody understands, and Councilman Miranda, this is my understanding, is that we have to open up the entire interlocal, which jeopardizes the CRA contributions from the county. And now my question, Mr. Massey, is that when both parties agree to reopen the agreement, can one just, after it's been agreed to be reopened, can you just walk away, or you would have to go to impasse? Or
No, yeah, there's nothing that I understand in the law that would mandate that we agree to something that the county is proposing that we find objectionable.
So you could just one party can just say, never mind?
Basically, yes. I mean, that would be, and we would still be governed by the existing interlocal, so.
Yeah, I think it's premature. As you look at these numbers for the next few years, we're in the negatives. We have so many unmet needs. I think Councilwoman Hurtek clearly stated what we've got the problem. I'm passionate about the streetcar. I worry about this proposal jeopardizing the opportunity to build the streetcar in downtown. There's other projects in here and other projects that I've highlighted that we are going to have to fund. I hear Councilman Carlson's argument. I think I would like to hear that argument from the next council as we see a little bit more clarity, as we maybe put the fourth wall on the house and start finishing the roof, because we're not there yet. As it starts coming a little closer to finish, I just don't think we're there yet. I'd like to see this discussion in 4 years.
Thank you, sir. Board Member Vieira.
Thank you very much. A couple of thoughts I want to give, which is Councilman Maniscalco's idea on even going lower to see if we can get something, I think is very worthwhile. I second this. I'm going to be supporting this. This CRA, the last CRA, we've always, whenever we had the opportunity to vote on it, supported the downtown cap, lifting it and reforming that, but not Channelside. Again, the big difference is we lose money with the county with Channelside. With this, there's not much detriment You know, we hear a lot about, you know, tying the hands of future councils. I see it the other way, which is this unties hands. No one's gonna run for city council going, I wanna give all this money to downtown Tampa. They talk about roads in New Tampa, south of Gandy, West Shore, et cetera, and East Tampa, Sulfur Springs, et cetera. I think this helps to untie future generations' hands if done in a conservative way, which I think we can get there. The whole issue, and I'm glad the question was asked on the interlocal agreement, you know, I don't want us to talk about opening the interlocal agreement as if we opened the gates of hell into the earth and then hell come. No. We can shut the door. It's just a talk. That's it. It's cool. So like Councilman Clendenin said, we can walk away. That's fine. So that's not some huge, you know, revolutionary act at all. Some things are being mentioned about Sulfur Springs. If this passed, and we gave all the, you know, to say, we're gonna pass this now in the year 2028, the next council's gonna give money to Sulfur Springs, that happens, I'll give you $1,000, okay? That's not, there you go, that's not gonna happen. Which we'll deal with that one later. But again, this unties hands. This is something that is a reasonable thing to merely put on the table and talk about that can benefit the whole city while continuing to support a downtown CRA. I've always supported some level of it. I think that's reasonable. Again, Councilman Maniscalco going lower, why not?
Board Member Maniscalco.
Yeah, I would support a smaller number, you know, 5% to begin with, maybe 10%, but not go right to this motion is for the 25%, correct?
Yes.
I think it's too much too quickly. I think we should do it incrementally, so we don't end up in that negative, that minus 8.3 and minus $5.7 million, but at the same time freeing up some money. Would you be open to a smaller percentage, or are you set on that 75% cap?
Right now, I think we don't have a fourth vote. Is there anybody who's on the opposing side that would switch their vote if it was 10% instead of 25?
I would support a 10% cap because and I haven't done the numbers exactly, but if you look at a 95% contribution, a 75% contribution, meaning we would take it down to 90% or 85%, it wouldn't put us in the negative for 25 and 26.
And I also said starting 2028.
Okay.
And don't forget, the money is still, future council can still spend the money. The only thing is as Board Member Vieira said, we're taking off the restrictions. They can spend it downtown or anywhere else. Just for fun, I'll amend my motion if the seconder will agree to change it from 25 to 10. So that would be that we would propose that CRA staff go to the county to ask if they consider reducing the city's CRA contribution by 10% starting in 2028.
Okay, we have a motion amended by Board Member Carlson, second by Board Member Vieira. Board Member Miranda, you have comments?
Yeah, I have a comment, not exactly on the 10%, but I've heard the same roads haven't been fixed, haven't fixed anywhere. Not only in South Tampa. South Tampa's in terrible shape. So is West Tampa, so is Sulfur Springs, so is East Tampa. So is every road in the city of Tampa. However, I believe, Mr. Massey, there's about $500 million or $500 million that's supposed to be given back to and received by Hillsborough County, divided between Hillsborough County, Plant City, Temple Terrace, and the city of Tampa.
It's been reduced to about half of that.
Half of that.
Lawyer fees.
Okay.
Well, I guess somebody needed for something more than what we did. But I can't help what the other side of the government has done. But there is money coming in, and we do have something addressed in the budget for the roads. So the roads are going to be fixed.
Yes, I mean, and the AFT refund, only about half of that's going to be returned to be spent. My understanding, it must be used for resurfacing projects within Hillsborough County. I think DOT is the one that will be making the decision how that money is allocated to what projects.
Thank you.
And I mean, along with those things, there's other needs for the city. There's no question about it. But there's also budgets coming up every year that addresses some of those problems directly. So that's all I'm going to say right now. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Board Member, not Board Member, Deputy Administrator, Assistant Deputy Administrator Elise Drumgo, is there any comment that you want to make on this since you came to the podium? I feel like you want to say something.
I do. I would love to. Thank you, Chairwoman, for acknowledging. And for the record, Elise Drumgo, Deputy Administrator for Development and Economic Opportunity. I hear the discussion, and it is lively, and I know that you all are really considering the options here to cap the downtown CRA. But, and I understand the process of trying to get to that cap, but it really can't be for fun. We are trying to build a city long-term. The only person sitting at the dais with the knowledge and wisdom to remember why CRAs were created in the first place over time is Board Member Miranda. And I've heard him in previous meetings where he said that the downtown is your heart of the city, right? And people are not stepping away from the heart of our city. There are just less opportunities to engage. The CRA is here and it exists so that we could create those private-public partnerships. With the heart of your city, you cannot separate it from the body and expect either to survive. So we're having this discussion about taking money away from the heart of your city, where you still have gaps, where you still have underdeveloped parcels, where you still want to see progress happen, yet we want to take that money away from the downtown. There are still things that need to be done. There are communities that used to exist between here and I-4, between here and 275, and they need to be rebuilt. And we are here attempting to try to rebuild them through your CRA. Those monies were directed specifically, geographically, to that area for that purpose. If you want to line up all the people who live south of Gandy, who get flat tires from potholes, I'll gladly help them change them. But I tell you that the people who sleep under the bridge, right, who sleep under those underpasses, they need help.
Yes.
Those communities need to be rebuilt. So we need the affordability in our downtown. We need to interconnect the community. We need to reduce all the barriers and stop trying to separate us from us.
Madam Chair.
I'm not finished, Madam Chair. I would
Please
like to be
continue,
allowed
sir.
to complete my comments.
I'd like for staff to complete their comments. Go ahead and finish, and then we'll have a follow-up by Board Member Carlson.
I understand that there is an assertion that there is no risk to this other than just a conversation, but conversations take time. And that is time that we do not have as we continue to try to build. The more we talk, the less we're able to engage with private-public partnerships and with the community to help set the stage for that. And now, you see the numbers, we're already 4 years in the hole to be able to do that with a reduction of the TIF, because the money would put us in a negative. So now, this 4 years should be utilized to plan. This 4 years should be utilized to come up with those projects, to chart that path, to put the city in a better place in order to return those dollars to the general fund long term. We can't say we want to build community, but then say we don't want to partner with developers when they come through the door. We can't say we want to build community, but ignore the people in those spaces. They need us.
Thank you. Board Member Carlson.
Yeah, and apologies to Mr. Drumgo, will you pause, so I thought you were done. The simple thing on this is that instead of, we're not ignoring any community, what we're doing is opening the money up to any community. We're giving the city council more flexibility instead of less. We can still spend the money in downtown, but we can spend it in other parts of the city. We can spend it in East Tampa, Sulfur Springs, wherever we want. Madam Chair, could I just call the question? I think we all know where we're going to vote.
Call the question. Is there a second?
I'll second
Yeah.
call the question. No, I'll second the call the question.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, we want to have comments from Board Member Vieira.
Can we have a roll
And
call?
do you want a roll call to see?
Yeah.
We had to vote
For the question?
Oh, question?
I'm sorry, I voted wrong, sorry.
Oh, so did I. I thought it was,
Yeah, I thought it was the actual
Yeah.
thing, so yeah, can we do that again?
Sure.
Sorry.
Okay,
We're not used to call the question.
Okay, so we're voting on the call of the question, and that was second by you. You want to keep that?
Yes.
Okay. Roll call.
Hurtak,
Yes.
Clendenin,
No.
Maniscalco,
Yes.
Vieira,
No.
Miranda,
yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
Henderson.
Yes.
Motion passed with Clendenin and Vieira voting no.
Okay, so now we're going to take a vote on the motion that was made by Board Member Carlson, second by Board Member Vieira. Roll call vote for this one as well.
Clendenin,
No.
Maniscalco,
Yes.
Viera,
Yes.
Miranda,
No.
Carlson,
Yes.
Hurtak,
No.
Henderson.
No.
Motion failed with Clendenin, Miranda, Hurtak, and Henderson voting no.
Okay, wow. This is a good meeting.
Can I make the third?
Excuse me, Board Member Carlson, Board Member Vieira, I want to acknowledge him first. He was trying to say something,
Yeah,
and then you can follow up.
Thank you, ma'am. And my comment didn't have to be made about the motion, et cetera. I wanted to direct it just to our hardworking staff. You know, Mr. Drumgo spoke, and there's not many people who work in our city government who I respect more than Elise Drumgo. His temperament, just what he brings to the table as an individual, his life, his values. I value him. I value everybody who's here, and I always value the input of staff. Obviously, we had a disagreement on that issue, but I appreciate the passion, and I really appreciate a staff member putting themselves out there with this city council and this CRA, because you put a lot out there when you put yourself emotionally and on policy, et cetera. And I just wanted to say I appreciate it. That's all. Thank you.
Board Member
Never mind.
Carlson?
I'm
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Board Member Clendenin, yes, sir, I apologize.
Yeah, I just want to, because I think we're still going to talk about this a little bit more, because I think you're going to have a second motion.
No,
So we're done?
it seems like, the third motion I was gonna make was to say that if the reason that you all didn't want to pass this is because we're gonna be upside down for 4 years, I would just propose a motion to make sure we don't have any more funding. But that was not your argument, so I'm gonna drop that motion.
Yeah, so just to wrap this up, and for the public that's listening about the CRA, because a lot of things that Councilman Carlson said is true. There are so many unmet needs around the city. I mean, I ran on that, man, let's pave our dang roads. I'm hoping that when we're going into fiscal year 25, when we meet as a council, I'm really hoping that this council puts more money towards paving the roads. And the sidewalks, it's a huge unmet need across the city. So 100% we have to do that. So we're gonna have to find the money in other places. But there's also unmet needs in downtown. And the housing part, the previous council purchased land, the Salvation Army land and the stuff along Ashley. We've got a proposal that's gonna be coming back before council about the redevelopment of that. I'm very excited about that project. It's a critical element. It's in a perfect place. I'm hoping that it's going to come forth, because I asked about having housing for students, the conservatory from Straz. I'm hoping that's included in it. There's no other opportunity for that to happen. It's a perfect place. It's a great opportunity. So we can have students, we can have mixed income, we can have an element that is able to afford to live in downtown that currently can't do that now. So these are the kind of things that we need to do. So that's one of the reasons why I'm supporting this. We do have a lot of unmet needs. Transportation, the streetcar. The streetcar is going to transform northern downtown going up into Tampa Heights. It is going to cost money. This board, and then when we meet as council, is going to have to devote money to it. And some of the money that you see in the unspent money, I guarantee you we're going to have to start looking there. All that undeveloped land, from when you get in that area between what's developed now in downtown and the interstate, which is part of the CRA, there's going to require infrastructure. There's going to require, reconnecting streets and sidewalks and lighting and a lot of things that are going to have to happen there. The convention center, the aquarium, there's a lot of things, not aquarium, sorry, because that's Channelside, but there's a lot of things that are happening downtown. Marion Street, I want to keep that on the tip of people's tongues. Marion Street is going to be transformational for another key area of downtown. It's going to bring a lot of, we invest in it, and we're going to get a return on that investment from the city. People will thank us for what we do if we keep that on the tip of our tongues and we think about that. So there's a lot of things happening in downtown. It's an exciting place to be. It is the heart of the community, and it's not time to pull the rug out from under it yet.
Thank you, Board Member Clendenin. Any other comments before we move on? Okay. You have more.
Yes, item number 2.
But wait, there's more.
Now we are going to have that discussion about the Channel District CRA. So again, same information I'm providing in response to the CRA board motions to reduce the contribution to the Channel District CRA, and then what those reduction scenarios look like. The Channel District sunsets in 2034. As you see, there is a contribution from the port and the county into this channel, to the Channel District CRA. And again, I'm going to be providing those commitments that are secured in the Channel District with a projected 11% annual revenue increase year over year. So these are the commitments within the Channel District that either meet the CRA objectives, such as affordable housing, or actual contracts that are drafted and written. So we have Riverwalk Beneficial Bridge Study. We can anticipate a substantial amount of money going into that after the study is completed. Right now, that's a minor investment for the study in order to find out what would the price tag be for the connection of the Riverwalk at that location. So, so that would be a substantial increase in that investment. Same with Washington Street Park. We're looking at possibly around a $5 million contribution to the renovation of Washington Street Park. We've only gotten to the design, the conceptual phase at this stage. So there will be necessary money added to that $1.5 million for the completion of the construction. Channelside Drive Urban Park. As you know, we've acquired 810 Channelside Drive for the intention to create an urban park. And based on other comparable parks in the city, we can guess that that park construction would be anywhere between $3 and $4 million. So that would be an investment that we have not realized yet. The landscaping is a new contract that we have that's projected out over 10 years, again, from fiscal year 24 to fiscal year 33. And we pay around $275,000 per year for that contract to do enhanced landscaping that the Channel District CAC requested. So that is that figure. Pressure washing as well. We upgraded to 2 to 3 pressure washings per year in the Channel District. Enhanced pressure washing, that's a $55,000 annual contract, so $550 over the 10 years. And then wayfinding signage, again, the fabrication, installation, maintenance of the signage concept that we've approved. And these are anticipated commitments that are coming forward. There we have Florida Aquarium, the historic streetcar operations that we provide on an annual basis, the future park I mentioned that could be anywhere between $3 and $4 million. Security cameras, we're working with the Tampa Police Department on installation of additional security cameras. That's already in the budget. We just need to confirm the amount of money on that. A Riverwalk expansion, those are discussions still to take place, and acquisitions and development. So any opportunities we may see for land acquisition in the Channelside, in Channel District. And then math. So same columns as represented in the downtown graph. We have the $34 million starting in 2024, and just want to point out the fact that that also includes the rollover of 2023, so that's why that looks substantial. Taking away the committed items that I showed on the previous slide, then with a reduction of 25% and a reduction of 50%. Provides the math in the third and the fourth column. And I do just want to mention that this doesn't holistically paint a picture, because we are just talking at the direction of the board, just those things that are committed. So there are items like administration, there are items that are not taken out of these math equations because the direction was only to provide subtraction of the committed projects. There are other things that would be subtracted to paint the full picture.
Thank you, ma'am. Are you finished?
I am complete.
Thank you very much. Board Member Hurtak, this was your item. Do you want to go first, or?
Yes, thank you. This item I brought forward mainly because of the downtown. I said if we're gonna reduce it somewhere, it should be Channelside. And you know what I learned? I learned that we already did that. I didn't know that until I read this presentation, that this was already done to 80% in 2015. And the fact that this sunsets in 10 years, to me, the big question is, and I mean, this is not for a full-on discussion, but I'm just curious, if this ends in 2034, when do we stop planning? And how do we look at a wrap-up? It's just a question that I have no idea, like, how to even consider.
That's a great question. And that's why we really want to be strategic and what are we accomplishing in years 1, 3, and 5, and then really make it out to a 7 to 10 years so then we can plan for a closeout. And we don't have any open contracts, any committed funding, and that's really where the discussion would be of wrapping up the projects and ending the CRA there.
Okay, and then I appreciate, oh, I'm so sorry, Mr. Massey.
No, and the other thing I wanted to point out, Channel District recently went through a process of amending their community redevelopment plan. I think they updated their strategic action plan. Really, those need to be kind of where we focus in on what are the projects remaining, what do we want to accomplish over the next 10 years. That's why we're going through this whole updating of the plan. So.
And just to add to that, that's really what we're looking to do, is to bring these ideas and these projects to you as the board, so then you can help us decide on those commitments, the years that they should be done, the amount of funding we want to contribute. So staff is looking to bring those types of recommendations to you.
Okay. And I will say the exact same thing I said about downtown, the fact that we need affordable housing in every portion of the city. I would not support reducing the commitment of 30% toward affordable housing in this district, just like I wouldn't support it in the downtown district. So if we're going to keep the CRA, we need to really, really start focusing on what we're going to do with that affordable housing funding. That needs to be the absolute priority. I have no problem funding these other issues, especially the you know, we've supported all of our other cultural assets. I have no problem supporting the aquarium in this, and I have no problem supporting the expansion of the Riverwalk. But how do we get affordable housing in there? That's going to be probably the most challenging part of the Channelside CRA going forward, and so I'll expect to see that in the strategic action plan and the CRP going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilman Maniscalco, then Councilmember Clendenin, then Carlson.
Just real quick, I've already made several comments regarding this. I wouldn't support capping or reducing it. As was already mentioned, this has been visited in the past. But also there's the county contribution in this, which is different from the downtown. So I would just leave this alone. That's it. Thank you.
Councilman Clendenin and Councilman Carlson.
I concur with Councilman Maniscalco with a couple of observations. What is the plan for, I know it was mentioned earlier about land acquisition for growth. One of the things that's woefully inadequate in Channelside is green space. Are we actively like making offers on land or trying to, while there's not much left? I mean, the dirt's getting rarer and rarer. What's the plan for green space in Channelside?
Definitely. Thank you for asking that. And we know it's going to cost more. We know acquisition is going to cost more, and we know housing is going to cost more in downtown and Channelside. And we are aggressively looking for land, and like you said, there's not much of it. And the process for that is that we look into different land, and we work with the deal. We work with the seller to get to a deal, bring it to the CAC for recommendation, and bring it to the CRA board for recommendation. So just for awareness, we are looking at potential land to bring to you soon in Channelside.
Okay. What do you know? What is the percentage of vacant land right now in Channelside? I mean, what's the acreage that's available in Channelside? Do we know in the CRA?
Not much.
Do we know?
There's quite a bit of open acreage, but most of it is under port control, or it's one of the projects you'll be hearing tonight. It's on the east side of Channelside Drive is where most of the vacant land now exists.
Right, but not within the CRA though, right?
It is.
Is it? Okay.
Yes, yes it is.
Okay. That'd be a tiny piece. Okay, very good. Yeah, I same sentiment, because of the county's contribution. This has already been previously reduced, and this was the timeline that I was thinking about when we were talking about downtown. I had Channelside's timeout in my head. But yeah, it's the exact same sentiment that has been expressed. There's still these unmet needs, and again, to my mind, green space is one of the most important, along with transportation. As far as it's something, if we can make the greatest amount of good for the greatest amount of people with the bang for the buck, it's that transportation enhancements and green space in Channelside would be a missed opportunity if we don't jump on it while we still can, because that that window is not going to be open for very long.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Carlson, then Councilman Miranda.
Thank you. I feel the same way about this one that I do about downtown. I support keeping the other CRA districts. There really is no slum and blight compared to other places in the city, like East Tampa, West Tampa, Sulfur Springs. We talk about the USF area, even places south of Gandy. It does. I think that today we couldn't get a CRA in this area. It has been very successful, as Mr. Stoltenberg said, and I made a motion in 2020. It failed, I think, 6-1. After that, I spent a lot of time with stakeholders, and I walked up and down the streets and listened to what they had to say. There's stuff that's in the CRP right now that they have put in. They're in the process of community building, and there are some key pieces that are missing in their community building that they want to put in, and I understand that. It has 9 years left, which makes it very difficult for us to be able to move it at this point. 4 years ago, it was 13 years, so that was a different situation. And also, as others have said, there's the county match, and so we would be losing that money. So take out, I think, maybe half of the money that's there, or you would double that number as what's coming in that the county is able to put in. So because of that, I'm going to vote no. Philosophically, I don't think we should have money in areas that are successful and don't have slum and blight when we have issues in other parts of the city. But this one, I think, is very difficult and challenging, a lot more challenging than downtown. I still think that we have to be careful about what projects we spend. As you all know, I'm against funding the aquarium. The conditions coming out of the recession, COVID a few years ago, when we were trying to restart the economy, and also considering that there was defunding of the arts before that. There were reasons that we made some infrastructure projects. I don't think any of those projects would get funded today because the current conditions. So we need to be really careful. And the test really is that if you're standing in front of somebody's house and their road looks terrible and you say, I can't fix your road because I'm going to spend it on this. If you feel comfortable saying that, then we can vote on it. Or if you meet, as Mr. Drumgo said, you meet people sleeping on the streets and you say to the 50,000 people, we can't build houses for you because we're spending money on this, then that's fine. If you feel okay. I don't feel okay spending money on things like aquarium versus spending on affordable housing. If this money is trapped in Channel District, I agree that we should spend on affordable housing. I also don't agree with developing the Portland. The maritime industry will fight. We will cripple our economy if we convert that Portland to condos, as some lobbyists and former elected officials want to do. We need to protect it. There are some areas that have already been changed, but the areas that have not, we need to protect them. If they're not going to be cruise terminals, they need to be something else because we don't have more deepwater ports. I also am very against developer subsidies. There are lots of people that have invested in Channel District already. Why should we give them a subsidy and an unfair advantage versus the people that have already invested in there? The other folks invested with the expectation that they would have a fair playing field. Why would we give somebody subsidies? If we're going to give affordable housing subsidies, I think we ought to do it on a per unit basis, not a development basis, because it needs to be the same across the board for everyone. And so I'm gonna vote no. But I think we need to be really, really careful about what we spend money on. Affordable housing is fine, green space is fine, community building projects is fine, but disrupting the maritime economy is not okay. Thank you.
Board Member Vieira, followed by Board Member Miranda, followed by Vieira. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Really appreciate it very much. Well, you've heard 9 years, right? Did you hear the same thing I heard, 9 years? What happens at the end of 9 years? It's over, right?
That's right.
So I'm not smart, I'm not so intelligent, but I can tell you one thing, that after 9 years, where does all the money go to? Whose coffers? Can you answer that?
The general fund.
I didn't hear you.
Back to the city.
The general fund, you said, right?
Yes.
What a miracle. You're going to get all your money back. Is that hard to figure out? I don't know. So I'm saying this, at the end of 9 years, whatever you invested, you're going to get to do somewhere else at the coffers of where you invested in so they can live better. Rome was not built in one day, but it burned real quick. So what I'm saying is, stay the course. The streetcar, the things that we've done to make it attainable at some point is there. All you have to do is extend it. A fire station is needed, and you don't have to give developers money. You can do it another way, by allowing them to build more units in lieu of money. So that part is gone, if you really want to do it. But we can't think just one way, you can change things. You can do things better. In 9 years, all that money goes back to the general fund. So what are we really talking about? 9 years is a very small time in history when you're looking at a city our age. And for the future, it could be forever, those 9 years. What you're going to get back is exactly what we're talking here, into the city coffers after 9 years. So what's the beef? Remember that ad commercial, where's the beef, lady? I'm asking this council, where's the beef? You're going to get it back. I'm not going to scare tactic. I don't scare anybody, especially at my size. So what I'm trying to say is hold the course, fly the airplane, you still got gas in it, and make a good landing, and the city is going to be just fine. Just let history and time take care of what you're trying to do. We're trying to keep the city like it is, expand it at the same time. And by the way, there's now one city that I know that's over 250,000 people living in it that's got a downtown that's dying. And I'm not pro downtown, I'm pro the city of Tampa. All of it's come together. The University of Tampa's gone from about 1,500 when I was there to almost 12,000 students going there now. What they've done there is unbelievable. The amount of buildings and structures that they've done and the education uplift, well, it's bigger in enrollment now than Princeton and Wake Forest. What a city. We used to have nothing, we were all happy. Now we're getting to have a lot, and we're not happy. Now, you heard me say that before. I always say another thing, I listen to what you say. I remember most what you don't say. And that's what they don't say, that in 9 years is all yours again. They don't tell me that. Have you ever heard that anywhere? No. You know why? Because it's a secret. They think it goes on forever. It does not. It's an area to bring up an uplift so everybody can have something later on at the cost of somebody else. You're paying it for, and then you're going to get it back. Just like having a bank account, not drawing out the interest or your money. At the end of 20 years, you put $1,000 in, you got more than $1,000. And you start getting it back. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Before we go on, I kindly ask those in the chamber to please lower your voices or step outside for comments because it is distracting. I appreciate it, just respectfully. Board Member Vieira.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate you. Yeah, just really quick, again, I've always opposed the downtown, or the, the Channelside cap because of the county issue. We lose funds. I just don't think it's fiscally wise. I'm really glad Councilman Miranda brought up the fire station issue. I mean, obviously this is CRA, but we're talking about Channelside. I believe that we either need some sort of a station presence in Channelside or robust expansion of Station 1 so that we can better address the needs, the fire, medical, emergency needs of Channelside. I think that's very, very important. And I hope by the time this council's finished that we get something there. That's critical. That's just critical. But yeah, thank you. Appreciate you.
And just relative to the fire station issue, I just want to remind the board, one of the prohibitions in state law is that we can't use CRA funds to build a fire station.
Thank you. That's why I said I'm in CRA.
Okay, moving on.
I think if that's concluded your discussion about the Channelside, do we want to have a motion to not move forward with this? I don't know if you need a motion or not, but it's here for a presentation, so I think we need some direction from you all about whether you want us to move forward or not.
Board Member Hurte.
Then I'll make a motion to take it off the table.
Second, could we just?
Okay, there's a motion on the floor and a second by Board Member Vieira. Is there discussion? Board Member Carlson.
Could we just change that to a motion to receive and file?
Okay, motion to receive and file.
Okay, all right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Attorney Massey, for that.
The next item, which impacts the interlocal, and I'll leave this off, is the potential of expanding the one or more of the existing Ybor CRAs down to Adamo Drive. Under state law, you can modify a community development plan to expand its boundaries, but in order to do so, you have to go through the same steps that you would have to go through to establish a new CRA altogether. So you have to do a slum and blight study. There would have to be a public hearing before City Council to find that there is make a finding of necessity to address the slum and blight studies in that area. We would have to come up with a plan or amend the existing plans to address that specific area. And then the other issue, and this is where things get complicated, the increment is based on the year that the CRA is established. If you try to modify the boundaries and include it into an existing CRA, you potentially, and the wisdom is that you would have to reset the date for determining the increment, which means there will not be money available within that Ybor CRA to fund the things you've already wanted to move forward with, like the rebricking of 7th, or some of the infrastructure improvements related to the gasworks project, some of the other things that are on the table. What the city has done in the past, because of this increment issue, we've had it come up twice before. Downtown, we expanded downtown, and we do have one unified plan for downtown, although we have one that deals with core and non-core, and we have 2 separate trust funds for those things, and it becomes difficult to account for that. And so when we wanted to expand Ybor several years ago, what we did is we created a whole new CRA to keep the trust funds, the plans, everything separate. That's what I would encourage you all to do if you're interested in expanding down to Adamo.
Board Member Clendenin.
Yeah, I would do the same thing we just did with the documentation that you just provided, the clarification that our council just provided. I'd make a motion to receive and file based on, I think that the economic development, what we're going to see here tonight on council, and what's already happening, the catalyst projects that are happening in Ybor City, this is going to self-resolve itself, the area that we're talking about, and the complexity and the cost that we'd incur as a city to be able to do that the cost versus benefit just doesn't justify that action. And while it's a well-conceived project, I think the reality though, we're in a phase of economic development, and that this is really just, it's not going to be needed. The market is going to take care of this on its own.
Can I make a comment?
Board Member Colston.
Yeah, this was, I think this was my motion. Yeah. So the Ybor CRA ends about 3 streets north of Adamo right now, and as you all know, there may be some development across Adamo, different places, and this area will be the gateway to Ybor. It will be people across Adamo, and so there's infrastructure projects that need to be done in the Adamo area to enable people to walk across. And then you all have been on walking tours, I think. There's what I call 6 blocks, but there's 4 warehouses and like 4 huge kind of Quonset huts there. Some of it's pickleball now, but Daryl and his partners want to convert a lot of it to the arts. Adjacent, 2 or 3 landowners have offered land to the Art Space, which is a national nonprofit that is trying to build an affordable workforce housing for artists there. For disclosure, Morris, I'm on the board of the Tampa Arts Alliance, which is a nonprofit, and one of their sub-projects that they work with is the art space, but I don't have any financial interest in it, just to disclose that. But anyway, art space in the current environment, with all the capital campaigns going on, art space needs some kind of government support to be able to move forward. The only way that the CRA can participate is if this boundary is changed. And so not changing it could kill the art space project, or it will send everybody back to the drawing board to find another place. Keeping in mind that those artists would be living in an area adjacent to the new gateway to Ybor.
And I think some of the big arts investments also will not happen on their own. Some of the developers, like Gerald Shaw and others, have invested in Crest Building. Don't forget, a week from tonight, there's the third art walk, which has about 20 or 30 different artist places that you can go to. But without CRA support, the big investments in the arts, the continued big investments in the arts, are not going to happen by the private sector alone. And so it depends on whether we want art to be sustainable. If you look in St. Petersburg, Warehouse Arts District, Arts Exchange, the nonprofit sector came together, but the city also came together to put money in it. So now the artists own their own space, and the art space proposal in Ybor is similar to that. But there's also opportunities for nonprofits or others to own space so that artists won't get gentrified out, because we know that people want to live and work near the arts. We know that arts is an economic engine. So we probably don't have the votes for this in this environment, but if we don't do this, we need to seriously look at the other agenda item, which was taken off, which is how can we, through the CRA or the city, or ask the county to help support some of the arts initiatives in Ybor, because the private sector can't fund all of it. And we're going to lose the momentum in Ybor if we don't continue making investments in the arts. Thank you.
Board Member Clendenin.
Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with anything you just described. I just think the bureaucracy of doing this and the timing and then also the drain on the Ybor CRA is potentially dire for some of the unmet needs that we have in that area. It doesn't prohibit us as a city council to do a lot of what you just described. So I think that we just have to, and obviously the revenue, with the exception of the county part of it, that revenue that's being generated in that area, as a council, we can identify revenue that's created in that area and reinvest in the same area to do those same type of enhancements you just discussed. And I think as we talk about developing on the south side of Adamo and that area, we need to take into account what it's going to cost to do those enhancements for crossings and pedestrian safety and all the things that's going to come with us. So that all needs to be key when we're considering these redevelopment projects. So I agree with everything you just said, with the exception of doing it through the expansion of the CRA.
Yes, of course. Board Member Carlson.
Morris, we can't talk to each other outside this room, so I would just ask all of you to keep in mind that and talk to the Ybor folks about all the arts things that are going on and see if you support any of it. If you do, bring it up in these meetings, because I can't talk to you outside. There are some other things. The Ybor CRA, as it is, has, I think, $5 million in affordable housing they haven't been able to spend, but there's an exciting opportunity to partner with the arts to build affordable housing in Ybor with part of all of that money. And then the other arts things going on. But the thing I was going to say to Morris, and I don't need an answer now, but we might, if more than 3 of you are interested in using city money at some point for any of those arts investments, and city money, maybe we could consider something like a virtual TIF, where we don't have to officially make it, but we just say, we calculate money collected in this area for 5 years or something would be invested. Anyway, not to be resolved today, but just if you want to keep up the momentum at Ybor, we need to figure something out.
Board Member Hurtak.
Thank you, and I'm just going to say this because I'm a broken record. We need affordable housing in every single part of the community, and that's part of the CRA's goal is this board has decided 30% toward affordable housing, and so there's no reason to say they can't find something to do with it. Absolutely, we can find something to do with it, and it's just going to be the right project. So I just want to, again, hammer home, affordable housing is for every portion of the city.
Okay, recognize Board Member Clendenin.
And remember, it can be to artist housing too, so y'all out there listening. So
That's affordable housing.
I'd just like to make a motion to receive and file the memorandum from Morris Massey and the email from
Is there a
Aaron Bradley.
second? There's a motion on the floor by Board Member Clendenin, second by Board Member Maniscalco. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And the last item that would potentially affect the interlocal agreement between the county, city, and the CRA is Mr. Vieira's motion about creating a new redevelopment area in Sulfur Springs. And so,
Board Member Vieira.
Is anybody speaking on that from staff?
It's on the agenda. It's number 10. Number 10. Item number 10.
Yep.
Okay.
item number 10. I don't know.
It says there's a PowerPoint.
To speak to that, I don't believe they are. But in order to create, just to lay the groundwork, we would have to amend the interlocal, we would have to do a slum and blight study, then there would have to be a finding of necessity that we need to address within a defined area the slum and blight conditions that the study states that exist. Then you would have to adopt a community redevelopment plan, and then you would have to pass an ordinance creating the redevelopment trust fund that would then lock in the date that we would freeze the tax base that would go to the city and the county, hopefully, but that's all subject to negotiation. And then the increment, any increase from that time forward would then go into the redevelopment trust fund for that area to be spent on redevelopment activities within that area. So.
Thank you. And may I, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Thank you very much. And you know, this has been discussed a lot. A lot of us have said that we support a Sulfur Springs CRA, and this is one way where we can begin to have discussions on it. And remember, that's all that this is. This whole fear idea of we talk an interlocal agreement and we're opening up the gates of hell into our earth. No, no, no. We can walk away. This is just talking, and something that it may have been said by Attorney Massey, we talk with the city as well as the county. It's a long process, right? This is a long process. This isn't something where if you vote for it today, you're like, that's it, the train's left the station, I've married it, and there's no divorce because I'm an Orthodox Catholic. No, not at all. So I will make a motion on this that I'll discuss in a little bit. You know, there's arguments that are going to be made against this, right? And there's a lot of different positions. One position is that CRAs force bodies to spend money in places. I admit to that, right? And that's why I'm doing this for Sulfur Springs. We don't invest in Sulfur Springs. The poverty rate for children in Sulfur Springs is 72% compared to about 20% for the United States. Well over 300% of the national poverty rate. Sulfur Springs, about 2/3, 60% African American, about 25% Hispanic Latino, a strong majority area that has been left behind, not just from our prosperity, but also from our legislative agenda. I can't think of, other than Fire Station 25, that we got over in Sulfur Springs maybe about 2 years ago to help out with Station 13. There haven't been a lot of robust investments. That's not putting anybody down anymore, isn't putting me down because I'm one of 7, right? So it's a mea culpa on my part. This is the right thing to do as a discussion. We're not marrying it today. We're simply going to be talking about it. There's arguments saying, well, the public's angry over CRA in downtown. Again, there's different arguments to that, but those 72% of kids living in poverty in Sulfur Springs shouldn't have to bear the burden of that anger from other parts of the city, in my opinion. We know that CRAs are a tool for economic development if done right. Talk to the people in East Tampa, in West Tampa, in Ybor City who live there. They like their CRAs. CRAs, if done right, are a way in which underprivileged and blighted areas can get the benefits of the free market by encouraging funds to be rooted up in that area and to be spent in that area on the things that benefit the people of that area. So again, a lot of us have talked about saying, hey, I'd love to have a Sulfur Springs CRA. This isn't the time to immediately get it, but it is the time to begin that discussion. This is something that if we begin it now, it could be some time until it comes to fruition. And by the way, if we begin it in a couple of years, whatever it is in the timeline, will it take some time for that Sulfur Spring CRA to accumulate money? Absolutely it will. Absolutely it will. But the time to start is now. The time to start is now. And again, when folks say, well, we can spend money in Sulfur Springs if we want to, News at 11, we haven't. And that's why I'm doing this CRA proposal that many of us have said that we're for, because it compels us to spend money in an area where almost 3 in 4 kids live in poverty. It's the right thing to do as a discussion. Talk with the city, talk with the administration, talk with the county about it. Let's begin that discussion. This is a really, really big step, but it's the right thing to do. We can do better, and this is a way to compel us to do better, right? To compel us to do better. So I hope that we, again, begin the discussion. That's all this is.
Thank you, sir. Board Member Miranda, you had your light on. Was there something else?
No, I'm sorry.
Board Member Hurtak, Board Member Carlson.
Thank you, and thank you, Board Member Vieira, for bringing this up, because I agree we can do better. but I have a bunch of questions on how we can do better. And so I'm actually going to ask Mr. Drumgo if he is, I believe he's still here. Could you have a moment? I would like to ask him to kind of talk to us a little bit about this in that, and not from a CRA perspective, but from a city perspective. And that's why I asked him to come up. Right now, in looking at Sulfur Springs, there is not a large commercial district to draw down money, even if we created a CRA. We don't have the tax base for that because most of it is a home ownership or is a residential area. Am I correct in that?
That is correct for the most part.
Okay. So then the question is, what do we do? How do we develop that? How do we create incentives? I've been working with Parks Director Tony Mulkey on giving some love to the parks in that area. We just approved last week money for the Green Artery that's going to be going through that area to help with a bicycle pedestrian connection that's going to go. The Green Artery is the loop that connects all the way up to Sulfur Springs, all the way to downtown. But what can we do when you drive through Sulfur Springs to see the actual commercial areas? We're talking about the dog track, we're talking about the old Kmart, and these really giant, for lack of a better word, surface parking lots with a little bit of retail. What are ways that we as a city council can help create redevelopment incentives for that area? I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I think, I mean, it's a broad approach on a redevelopment perspective. I would say that, currently the city, we're getting ready to engage in a Sulfur Springs area plan. And, some of that would be to figure out who the real stakeholders are, understand the landowners, and then how we would leverage that. But a lot of it is really connecting those landowners with resources that help with the redevelopment that can financially kind of spur that. But really, it's a lot of relationship building and then digging into the overall need and understanding a little bit greater. But to Board Member Vieira's assertion, a lot does need to be done. And I think that what we're doing with this Sulfur Springs plan is to look at intentionally how we serve the area, and that's something that hadn't been done. And as we start to look at budget allocations and how we improve public infrastructure in that area in a way that would then support the development, that's how I think this body should be considering it, is the age of the infrastructure, the quality of those things in the area, and then being willing to invest in that infrastructure to support the development that we like to see, so that the community, when people do come in to engage in those projects, that we have that those facilities and that infrastructure is in place.
Thank you, because what I'm immediately thinking as Board Member Vieira was talking was, the expansion of homeowner occupied rehab. Now we have it with the CRA. Now I also know we have a city program that deals with that. So how do we incentivize these types of areas? And I think that's what the big question is. How do we start that conversation? And I know what Board Member Vieira also likes to do as a council member is to just put something on the agenda so that it keeps coming back to us. But what can we do? It sounds like you are creating a plan for this, but what can we as city council do to make sure this remains on our radar? Sure. And we may choose to open up the idea of looking at creating a CRA, but what do we do in the meantime? How do we, as a body, say this is a portion of the city that is important to us to lift up and to provide services where services haven't been? What would you say our next step needs to be as a city council? I know we're on a different plane, but we're talking about the same idea. So what is our next step, regardless of what happens today?
Well, so I think part of it is allowing us to get through the study so that we can get an understanding of what policies that may come out of that you all as a city council should drive us towards. But then also staying engaged with the budgetary process as we look at FY25. You all will have an opportunity to see where we're expending those dollars, and then also to challenge us to intentionally expend some of those dollars in the area of need like Sulfur Springs. And so that, you know, just being very direct about it, I think it's measuring that investment and then staying committed to it and ensuring in your roles that we continue to invest those dollars, because that's really what this comes down to, is the monetary investment in the community. That's what you're asking us to do. I think that's what you would be wanting to do in creating the CRA, is to set aside that pot of money that designates that specific monetary investment. And so for consideration, it's looking at this budgetary process and getting a sense of how much would be adequate to start to really look at it, investing in the community, whether it be in parks, whether it be in the stormwater infrastructure. And then for us to also to continue to pursue those grant and funding and financial opportunities to support projects within Sulfur Springs as well, which is something that you're also doing through the low income, low access to resources and food in the community as well. So I think you all are doing a lot of that, and you're starting to see a little bit of momentum behind it. Again, it just takes a little bit of time for us.
And I just had one more follow-up question to that is, when do you expect that study to be ready?
So I would need to talk to Stephen Benson about that, because Stephen is overseeing that with his planning team. I know that we did engage in the RFP for the services with a consultant, and I just need to affirm what the outputs would be. I don't know if we've brought that contract forward for you all for approval, but we'll get you an update on it.
Okay, so that's actually what I would ask then. Sure. And I think that's something that I can make as a council member tonight, is a motion to have Mr. Benson come and just give us an overview of what the goal would be. Would that be a reasonable request and expectation?
Yeah, it would be. Okay. Absolutely.
If Mr. Vieira, oh, wow.
Speak of the devil.
Wow.
And he appears.
Did you run? That is amazing. That's phenomenal.
I think your name was mentioned 3 times.
And then you just appear.
So the
State your name for the record, please.
Stephen Benson, City Planning Director. We have gone through the procurement process to select a consultant, and now we're currently in negotiations with that consultant. So once we are able to bring that contract to you, I think you'll have a little bit tighter sense of a timeline of what's going to happen next. But we're still in that negotiation phase.
So you probably expect it to come to us within the next month or 2, would you say?
That would be our hope.
Okay. And the only other thing I would ask is that when you bring that forward, if you could bring a map.
Sure.
Of the area in which you are, like the boundaries, because I think a lot of us think about Sulfur Springs, but where are you envisioning the boundaries?
Sure,
and
absolutely.
to create the most impact, because anyway, so wow, thank you. I'm still just blown away.
Board Member Carlson.
I feel like we should let you speak since you came here. Thanks for running up here. Did you want to say anything else before I make my, I just want to make my comments about this, and I appreciate all my colleagues bringing our attention and the public's attention to this. I'm 100% in favor of helping Sulfur Springs. I also just spent some time there, and I have in the past, but I'm 100% against the CRA. For the same reason I didn't propose, even though Mr. Massey said, why don't you create a 3rd CRA in Ybor City. I'm not in favor of creating any new CRAs. I think CRAs are for lazy policymakers. We can move the money, and City Council can move it with 5 votes. And I think with Board Member Vieira's excellent advocacy, I think we could get 5 votes at the city to move money, and with the community supporting it. As was said earlier, just like in the case of East Tampa, it'll take years to put money in it, and then also when we get ready to move if we got ready to fund something else there, then people in the public will say, well, they've got a CRA, why do we need to put more money there? This is part of the same argument we get about East Tampa. But really, CRAs, and you've heard a lot of the language if you listen carefully to what's been discussed this morning, CRAs, what they really are is they're taxpayer subsidized gentrification. And this city, look at the $100 million that was spent on a downtown real estate subsidy rather than spending on affordable housing. That is the track record of the city in the past. We as this board and the last board started shifting money to other things, but CRAs typically, if you look at how the others were set up, they were set up to subsidize developers. And nothing against any of the developers. If I was a developer, I'd want it if I could get it too. But it's against capitalism and free markets to do that. And what government should do is fund things where there's a gap. The people in Sulfur Springs do not want 20-story, shiny, expensive, multi-million-dollar condos up and down the river. They want their community to be better. They want their schools to be better. They want the parks to be better. They want the sidewalks and roads to be better. Same things everybody else wants. And we can move that money up there without a CRA. And the way you get money in a CRA is by development. And the way this city in the past has gotten money in CRAs is subsidized developers. It's not a good idea. Goes against every economic principle. And you have to think about it in terms of economic development versus development or real estate development. Go to tampascorecard.com and look at how bad we're doing in poverty. That's because this city, for many years, focused on subsidizing development rather than helping people to do better. We need to focus planning and money around people and economic development and the economy rather than development, which is subsidizing real estate. Real estate is an important sector of our market, but it's not the only one, and we need to continue to move that away. Part of it is how we measure success, and we have to compare ourselves to other cities, unlike the way the mayor's just rolled out her scorecard. We need to look at other cities and show where we're failing, because we are failing in poverty, disparity rates between men and women and blacks and whites and others. We need to improve home ownership, and we need to help people build their own businesses. CRA, for example, does not allow us to have programs that help people start small businesses. We can do that within the city. And we need to get rid of the edifice complex, where we measure success only in terms of building and development. I agree that we need to do the community needs assessment. That's the first thing we would do in the CRA anyway. So let's wait. Let's at least wait until we get that back and see what we need to do. Let's see what the plan is. Hopefully it's based on robust public engagement, which I know Stephen knows how to do. And then let's create an action list and see if the city can fund it. If we can't fund it, the city, then let's talk about a CRA. But I would suggest putting in the bylaws a prohibition against developer subsidies. So I would say yes, absolutely 100% yes for Sulfur Springs. We absolutely need to do things. But the vision of Sulfur Springs is not to look like Bayshore Boulevard. The vision is to help the people there and the community be better. And Board Member Vieira, you got my vote for Sulfur Springs. All you need is 3 more in case the mayor vetoes it. So I think we could find 3 more votes. Let's vote yes for Sulfur Springs and no to another CRA. Thank you.
Board Member Clendenin.
Wow, you just kind of stole a lot of exactly what I wanted to say, Mr. Carlson. That was exactly right. I want to make sure that people understand that Sulfur Springs is an area with a rich history, and it's also an area of what's kind of left of some of our affordable housing. Some of it is some substandard, and that's what we have to improve on. We have to help the folks that are currently living in the city of Tampa, and that's what I keep talking. When we talk about a lot of these programs, I keep banging that drum. It's like, let's talk about the people that currently live in the city of Tampa before we talk about trying to make Tampa more attractive for people to come live here. Let's take care of our own first before we start talking about the people who want to live here. Sulfur Springs is a great example of that. I'm going to mention it again. What used to be called the Mayor's Challenge Fund, Sulfur Springs is prime for something like that. Owner rehab. Let's help people keep their houses. Let's help these senior citizens that have trouble with roofs, with painting their houses, keeping their yards up, getting their houses put back up into code. We don't need to tear things down to rebuild them, because guess what that does? Gentrification drives the price up and drives people out of their homes. What we need to do is keep people in their houses. Some of those large swaths of, everybody, I love it. Everybody's listening. Everybody talks about that darn dog track. Guess what? That's owned by somebody, and that person likes what they have. And we're not going to go steal property from her. It's her property. It's just, she's going to run her business the way she wants to run her business, and until that changes, that's going to stay the way it is right now. There's nothing we can do about it. Some of the other pieces of property, that'll get. There's going to be. It will come its time. We don't have to subsidize that stuff. It's going to happen on its own. Some of the other large commercial areas. But what we can do is for the neighborhoods and the people that live in Sulfur Springs, we can improve the quality of their life. We can improve the infrastructure that leads to their schools. Make sure that they all have safe sidewalks. Make sure that their roads are paved. Make sure that they have adequate lighting. Make sure that their streets are safe, so the people that are there can feel safe and secure in their homes, and that's a drug-free environment. Again, and let's take care of the senior citizens up there. Let's double down on those type of programs. that's the heart of what we should be doing as public servants. Take care of those folks, the senior citizens that have lived their long life, and they're let them age in place, help them stay in their homes. Let's do programs like that. I don't see the answer as a CRA. We have the tools available to us. This fiscal year 25 is coming. We're going to be sitting here talking about that budget. Let's get the votes and let's do it.
Thank you. Any other comments? Just a quick question on Sulfur Springs. Isn't it a heavily populated landlord-owned community where there are a bunch of renters? Do you know the percentage of that?
I don't have the percentage, but it is one of the highest in the city, yes.
Yeah. He mentioned the Mayor's Challenge Fund. I think without an interlocal agreement for Sulfur Springs and creating a CRA, we really should dive into an opportunity to support the possibility of increasing home ownership and rehabilitation of the home structures that exist in Sulfur Springs. I would like to remind people, Tampa Heights, which was the first developed community in the city of Tampa, were begging people to come in and redevelop homes when it was significant slum and blight. And so now people would equate it to being gentrified. What happens is, and it's out of our controls, is when people start developing communities, other people are attracted to them, and then it just balloons into, the possibilities of what is, and that's exactly what happened to Tampa Heights. Initially, it was significant slum and blight, and now, the beautification is there, and people have moved into the community. They've left Riverview and Apollo Beach to come live closer to downtown. So Sulfur Springs does have some opportunities where we don't have to create a CRA to make that happen. We should just look at the resources that we've done in the past under different programming for improving home development, and also, the possibility of, getting some of these landlords to sell their properties that they are not interested in fixing up. They're just maintaining the status quo and collecting rent, when there's an opportunity for their long-term tenants to be able to build wealth and equity in the homes that they've rented from these folks for a very long time. So I just think there's some opportunities there in that way. Another comment, yes, and we're going to go to lunch soon, so Board Member Vieira.
And I'm pretty good at math, so I know where the votes are going on this one. So I have one motion I'll be making at City Council on a workshop on CR on Sulfur Springs. One thing I would ask, and I do want to make my intent very clear. Folks say that CRAs tie people's hands. Yeah, and to an extent they do, but I want to tie people's hands to invest more money in Sulfur Springs, because I don't think that 5 or 10 or 15 years down the road, we're going to be consistently doing that. You know why? Because areas like Sulfur Springs get ignored. There's a reason why we're saying, oh, we haven't done a lot for Sulfur Springs, myself included, right? Because a lot of these underprivileged, blighted areas aren't involved, right? And Sulfur Springs is one of them. And so we haven't heard a lot from Sulfur Springs, but they got to hear a lot more from the city of Tampa. And that's my intent in putting this thing forward. So I will make one motion, which is the CRA discussion for Sulfur Springs. I don't think we should shut the door on that. I think that would be unreasonable. Councilman Hurtak talked about first hearing from Mr. Benson in City Council on the update on Sulfur Springs. Maybe we can have the workshop, and then maybe we have this item come back to us in October of this year. Just for an update. Maybe we get a report and we receive and file it because, man, we're making good on Sulfur Springs. Maybe we're not. But so what I'm going to do, if I may, is a motion to continue this item, since we're not going to open up the interlocal agreement for anything. So why take this up right now? And of course, we don't even have the votes on it, but to continue the discussion on a CRA for Sulfur Springs for October of 2024. And then I'll make the motion at City Council for a workshop on that issue, if that's permissible.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor by Board Member Vieira, second by Board Member Maniscalco. Any discussion?
Before we vote, you really want to help people out in any city, including this one? Find out how many reverse mortgages there are in an area. We see an actor go on TV getting paid to say how wonderful it is. I can name you 4 or 5 individuals. Well, 2 of them passed away. When you're hooked on reverse mortgage. Find out what the interest rate is And somehow these so-called individuals that want to help everybody out, or they wanted this government, I think this government told them absolutely not, that when they sell you something, a roof or an air conditioner or something, it goes in your lien on your taxes. If you don't pay it, you lose your house. Find out how many of those you have. And then you know what the hell you're talking about. Right now, we're just making good words sound better. Find out what the real problem is. How many reverse mortgages? And how many of them go to the other one? I don't want to say it because I don't want the city to get sued. I can tell you the companies that are doing it. And I can tell you where 3 of them are at, that they called me and I went to see them, and I couldn't believe what they're going through. Find all that out, and I'll tell you where the problem's at. That's all I'm gonna say. Thank you.
Board Member Carlson?
Yeah, I just want to say respectfully to Board Member Vieira, I don't support the CRA at all, any new CRA, so I'll vote no on this, but when you make the other motions regarding Sulfur Springs, I'll vote yes. Thank you.
Board Member Clendenin?
Yeah, ditto. I don't see myself changing my mind on the CRA, so I'm gonna also vote no on bringing this back. And I'm gonna say no on bringing it back because it's costs money to bring things back. It costs staff time. And the staff has a lot of other things to do. I don't see the opinion of this board changing, but when you do bring it before council for discussion, for what we can do on council, I will support that. But as far as bringing it forward, I want to save staff the time. I don't want them to have to spin their wheels and invest time and money and energy on this. That's not going to go anywhere. We have to be more. I think we as a board and us as a council, we need more cognizant of what we ask staff to do.
Okay, thank you.
May I say something?
Yes, Board
If I may.
Member Vieira.
I appreciate the remarks on staff. I've always worked well with staff and have a great respect with staff and relationship with staff, and I don't think this motion is the place to start lowering motions for staff. That's all I'm gonna say, but thank you.
Okay. All right. We have a motion on the floor by Board Member Vieira, second by Maniscalco. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, let's do a roll call vote on that.
Maniscalco,
Yes.
Vera,
Yes.
Miranda,
That's the CRA?
Yeah.
No.
Carlson,
Yes.
Hurtak,
No.
Clendenin,
No.
Henderson.
No.
Motion failed due to Miranda, Carlson, Hurtak, Clendenin, and Henderson voting no.
Okay, we are going to break for lunch.
Madam Chair.
A motion to break for lunch, is that a motion?
I do have a request.
Okay,
Before we break?
you're recognized, Ms. Moody.
Thank you so much. We do have 4 items left before we break for lunch. Just out of respect, I know that some people really want to hear the East Tampa Summer Youth Program motion. So if it's okay with you, I am willing to move my director's report to the last item to be heard today, and all the East Tampa items
And you know
will
what,
shift
that's a
up.
great idea. Let's go ahead and address that, and then after lunch, we'll go with the director's report, is what you're requesting?
Oh, no, we can break for lunch, and when we come back, it'll
Okay.
be East Tampa.
Well, I just have to say that, thank you, I'm sorry, board. I sit on the AHAC board, Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, and they have a mandatory meeting. And by mandatory, it means if I don't show up for these meetings, we can lose our SHIP funding, kind of mandatory.
Okay.
And that is this afternoon, so I will not be able to return after lunch
How long do you
for
think-
any of this
How long do you
conversation.
think the presentation on the East Tampa youth programs will take?
We're really trying to keep all presentations between 5 to 7 minutes moving forward. I'll talk about that to
Really,
the
that's the
director's
last
report, but
substantive
it'll be
item
5 to
before the
7.
director's report. In the director's report, you're basically asking them to set a number of items, right?
That's right.
Okay,
Yes.
so I don't think these items will take long. You may want to
Okay,
hold
we can
lunch
have
and
a
see if we
12:30
can get through
lunch.
see if we can get through the agenda.
I would, yeah, thank you so
Okay, yeah,
much.
no,
I
it's
really
not a
appreciate it.
problem. I'm flexible.
I tried to get them to reschedule and they wouldn't.
If you think 30 minutes, it will be done?
That is our goal. We'll strive quickly.
Okay,
So with that, I
let's
think we
go.
would need a motion to move the items forward.
So, are those in favor?
Aye.
I'm sorry, let's get he already made the motion, Vier made the motion, it was seconded by Maniscalco. I just want it for the record, clerk. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, we will proceed.
Thank you. East Tampa Manager, Mr. Cedric McCray, will come take the stand and talk about East Tampa Summer Youth Program. And with that, T and I can bring up the presentation that accompanies it.
We're just saying, Madam Chair, I have an appointment that's going to come up for about 5 minutes, but it hasn't come up yet. As soon as it does, I'll be rude and step out for 5 minutes, but it hasn't come
No
up yet.
problem. Okay.
Oh, this in here, PowerPoint, excellent. There it is.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Here we go. Boom. All right. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, you recognize.
Good afternoon, Cedric McCray, East Tampa CRA Manager. We'll go right into the PowerPoint related to the East Tampa Summer Youth Career Explorations Program and the East Tampa Youth Leadership and Entrepreneurship Program. And first, we have the board motions for each program to come back and provide an update, and we'll be doing that here at this time. Okay, the program goals were to demonstrate leadership skills and ultimately, outside of the youth that were participating, just having exposure with the neighborhood enhancement staff to work on some softer skills and leadership development, as well as expose them to careers and opportunities within the city of Tampa. So with that, we restructured the program last year with the assistance of Ms. Regina Castillo, and you all approved hiring a coordinator to help work with the youth throughout the summer, Mr. Ed Hunley. And the results of that went very well, so I'll just kind of walk you all through what transitioned or what happened last year and how we anticipate transitioning moving forward. We did hold a parent meeting in early June prior to the program starting, just to have conversations with the youth that had been selected through the hiring process, as well as the parents, so they knew it and had clear expectations about what would happen. We actually also involved two of our former chairs in the picture you see to the right to kind of speak to the importance and why they were so passionate about the summer youth program with the East Tampa CRA, and you've heard from Ms. Burton here this morning during public comment. Some of the field study opportunities, the trips that they took to the various departments, Hannah Avenue, the fire department, Chief Tripp and Chief Collins were very heavily involved in working with our youth and about the possibilities of working with the city of Tampa and the fire department. There were also other opportunities outside of the fire department, trips to the skills center. They heard from city staff, from our very own director who spoke, exposed them to different careers as it relates to Irwin Technical, Brewster. So they got a full gamut of opportunities, not only with the city of Tampa, but other technical colleges or institutions that could assist post-graduation. And we finished with a capstone event. Several of the CRA board members present participated in that event, and that was very student-led. And the adults, we just stood in the background to allow them to kind of do their thing, and they put the entire presentation together. And I think those who were in attendance were very impressed with the level of involvement and just, the comments from the kids and young people that participated during the summer of 2023. And we plan to do the same thing this summer as well. As it relates to the program specifically, there were 26 participants. We had 5 female, 21 male. 6 of the students graduated last summer prior to the program. We had 2 attending 4-year universities, and we had 6 that obtained permanent employment with the city of Tampa, and actually one was hired through one of the apprentice programs. And that was based on an individual that attended the capstone event that morning and offered that one of the young people an opportunity. And I would like to highlight in the picture, not that it's about me, but as the the last day of the program, July 31st, I'm in Publix here in the city, and I hear Mr. McCray, and it was Montre Washington. He had worked from 7 o'clock in the morning until 3 o'clock at the Lowry Yard his last day, and then I probably saw him at 5:30, 6 o'clock that evening in Publix. So just imagine the amount of time that he spent just working during a particular day. And to the right is Donald Walker. He is in school at Alabama State University. I was attending a fraternal meeting and knew he was there, reached out, and I met him in the student union. So we had a chance to catch up. But those are the type of effects and how we're following up with these individuals. With the program, phase one is what I just briefly described earlier a few moments ago. Phase two, the students will still work 32 hours per week, and then they will be considered an intern, and those participants from the city departments, they will execute job responsibilities and duties from and within a selected department. There will also be 3 days a week where they're doing traditional work, and the 1 day a week will be developing the soft skills, and that'll be kind of building on what they were exposed to last summer with Mr. Hunley. Phase three would be similar, but the intern participants will work within one of the city departments, and they will participate in a 4-day work week, and then there would be a bi-weekly visit by the coordinator on the specific internship site where they would be located. And at this point in time, that would be the coordinator that would be hired again for this summer. Currently, we've received over 73 total applications. 54 of those through the pre-screening process we're scheduled to move on, and we are slated to hire 36 pending the background checks that will be conducted. And I know that there were some concerns as it relates to the numbers and the increase as it stands right now. Presently, with the staff that we have in place, the 72 would be very difficult. We have partnered with Parks and Recreation and some other entities to see about making sure that we have placement for applicants through the city, even if they're not specifically in the East Tampa CRA program. And there is a job fair for summer youth that will be taking place on April 13th. And we also had in discussions with some of the vendors that have reached out to Ms. Castillo, Busch Gardens and the like, that would also be able to table at an event sometime in May to offer jobs that have gone unfilled for the summer. So what we're asking and informing you as a transition plan is that simply the summer youth program be adopted. There is a conversation to move it under Ms. Wynn's department, and Ms. Castillo, the diversity coordinator, would assume the role of the coordinator position, or coordinating the summer program specifically, on top of some of the other responsibilities she has here at the city. And Ms. Wynn has requested a budget allocation in the FY25 Neighborhood and Community Affairs budget to roll the program and continue under that umbrella.
Let's start right there because we got a couple of questions. Board
Yes.
Member Hurtak, and then followed by Board Member Maniscalco.
Thank you so much. Are you pretty much done with your presentation?
A couple more things.
Okay.
Another portion of it was the youth leadership component.
Okay, then this is a good place to stop for this. So, from my understanding, one of the reasons that we need to roll this into the city's program is because this program, once we are not working with the waste management team, we're no longer addressing slum and blight.
That is correct. That is one component of the program that we can use to justify, because they are actually working with the neighborhood enhancement team, throughout the week, and that's how we justify eradicating slum and blight.
So then what we're doing is just moving the program under Neighborhood and Community Affairs so that we can expand it, but basically allow youth to participate in a broader part of the city instead of just community enhancement.
Correct.
So that was question number one. Question number two, the budget allocation for the program, the community has said that they would like this expanded to be more for next year. So I would hope that the budget allocation, when it comes to us, is for that 72 students, or possibly more if possible. So just to make sure that Administrator Nguyen knows that we would like it to be 472. And then I would also, on that, Mr. Hunt was just phenomenal. If that was the gentleman who was hired for a part of that last year and had a really good rapport with the students. I was there at their graduation and they were amazing. And he was amazing. And so I really hope that he will be able to continue on with this program and then hopefully, make this a wider program to go forward.
Yes.
So thank you.
Board Member Maniscalco.
So a couple of questions. I heard the number 72 this morning, but I see 73 applications. There's 72 available spots. Where did
No.
that number come from?
And it's my understanding there were a total of 73 applications that were submitted.
Okay.
Through the application portal. And after the preliminary review, because there's certain information that's required, I believe 54 were approved with the pre-screening process.
How many individuals can be accommodated? Let's say if you had 73 applications and all 73 were eligible, do you have enough space to accommodate 73 young individuals?
Logistically, that would be very tough because we have myself, who has multiple responsibilities. We do have a coordinator, Mr. Hunley, and then we have Ms. Castillo, who is and she's fluid, so she's not there the entire time. And no classroom, you would have 72 children with one educator or responsible adult.
So through the screening process, 73 apps, 54 eligible, 36 is the likely number that would, if everybody says yes and moves forward, you'll have 36 people.
Correct.
And over the years, I've heard the picking up trash thing. What is that about? Because when I pulled up the links, and you go to the survey at the beginning, once you open everything, I see a variety of jobs and positions that are available. Is that correct? It's not just picking up trash.
Correct. The Parks and Rec ramping up for the summer. There are multiple positions that are available.
These children pick up trash. These children pick up trash. So don't get
Ms.
confused.
Burton, Ms. Burton.
Don't get confused. They are.
Please,
Ms.
no
Burton.
addressing from the audience. This is staff report.
That's what they do.
So, Mr. McCray, enrolling this into under Administrator Nguyen, this would open it up to different positions. It could be with Parks and Rec. It could be any other place in the city that would have job opportunities for young people.
That is correct. And with phase 2 and phase 3, the vision is to, partner with various departments, and some of them, and I would not be able to list all of them, but have agreed to take on interns.
So it broadens the opportunities for young
Correct.
people, and does it open it up for more positions, more applications? Let's say 100 people.
That is a possibility. What we are, in the numbers that we passed on to Ms. Nguyen, we're 36, but ultimately that would have to be her department's decision to increase those numbers.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Just a couple of, Deputy Drumgo, yes.
If I may, for the
Yes.
record, Elise Drumgo, Deputy Administrator for Development and Economic Opportunity. So part of this, and I just want to support the discussion because I know, we've got community members here as well. Our intent, and Attorney Massey knows, the CRA does not do workforce development, okay? And so part of this, in getting the CRA aligned with where it should be and what it should be doing, we've agreed to continue this program and then sunset it at some point under the operation of the CRA, but getting this into the administration's control with Administrator Nguyen so that you can then go out and do the things with the interns that are more appropriate for the city's functions and what the community would like to see. Ultimately, Administrator Nguyen, her responsibility is to put in that budgetary request to account for the program to support the applicants. So in this case, where we have historically served 36, we've heard the community say that they would like to have 72. Unfortunately, as Manager McCray explained, there are challenges in doing that with one single coordinator. And you have to keep in mind that Mr. Hunley is a temporary employee over the summer while he oversees this program. And so we do not know that there will be a job on the city side that would be able to accommodate Mr. Hunley, nor do we know, because we hired him through an agency, what it would look like to bring him on staff to do that. But I will say that the intent is to continue with a coordinator, and we would love to see Mr. Hunley continue. But outside of this room in your role as a CRA, as a council, you will be presented with those budgetary requests, and you have to keep in mind, when you're looking at the budget, there's a number attached to serving this that it's a hefty fee to administer this program and to be able to do it. And I know that Mr. McCray can tell you more about the numbers that he's used to administer on the 36. But if you effectively double that to 72, it would be twice that amount, and it would not account for the additional administrative costs to do it, because you would need to add at least 1 to 2 additional coordinators. So I just want to make sure it's clear that we are transitioning in a way that it should operate, and then it's incumbent upon the city council, you all as a city council, to ensure that the budget's in place for us to be able to operate the program at whatever capacity the community requests, whether it be the 36 or the 72.
Thank you so much. Okay, I just want to say a couple of things. And Ms. Burton, with all due respect, just give me a moment, because I really do appreciate your passion about East Tampa Summer Youth Employment. One of the things that I want the public to know is that there are students who live in East Tampa that work through the city summer employment program that's not part of the East Tampa summer employment program. So those are just numbers that you may not be aware of. They actually do exist. There are students who work through Parks and Recreation that live in East Tampa that did not participate in this particular program. Initially, 11 months ago, the reason why I started questioning this is because of the component where these students were spending time picking up trash and cleaning up their community. And the reason for that component is because it was CRA dollars being used. And I just want Attorney Massey to speak on that for a moment about workforce funding, mental health fairs, great things that are contributed to East Tampa, but they have nothing to do with slum and blight and CRA dollars. So it's, in a sense, it is the mismanagement of money. I love this program. I went to their celebration, and Mr. Hudley, I believe that was his name, not Hunt, Hudley, and Ms. Castillo put together an amazing program, student-led program, by the way, which made it very impressive, not the adults, but the students leading this particular program. And so the importance for us is really, it's about building trust with the citizens of East Tampa who want this program in their community, but it needs to be enhanced so that the students can have broader experiences that some summer employment kids already get because they're not under the umbrella of the East Tampa CRA-funded summer youth employment program. And so that's really important. It's not that these numbers can't grow. The application process, as you can see, it had 72 applicants, 54 are eligible, 36 under this particular funding because the model does exist. And we are continuing with it in good faith. We didn't just chop it at the block based on the recommendation of the CRA staff, because I wanted to move it over to Osea Wynn right away. But we do need a transition period so that the community can be comfortable, the kids can understand that they have an opportunity. Now, this is what's really important, what I'm about to say next, because I'm an educator. Now that, because of this summer youth employment program, there is an opportunity if we partner with Hillsborough County Public Schools. The students can earn their high school credit for workforce experience. They can be an OJT student where they receive their high school credit for working, which benefits them from a GPA standpoint, because if they go to work, they're going to earn that A in that 1 hour, that one unit credit that goes toward graduation. We need to partner so that they can get that. With that, that provides us an opportunity, because I just happen to be a CTE teacher. We have CTE staff, OJT teachers, on-the-job training that can support this internship style program where they can go around and check on the kids because it's a part of Hillsborough County as well, and earn their credit, as well as it being funded under the umbrella of neighborhood and community affairs. It does provide us with some broader and greater opportunities for the students to experience a broader set of skills. They don't have to pick up trash. They can work in a variety of departments. And that also takes time working with the staff to develop programs within those departments so they can have a really great experience. Even, visiting city council to see what we do. So I just think that, while I appreciate the passion of the community, it's really about relationships and trust to increase the program to higher numbers, and understand that some kids are going to apply for a job without it anyway. But the funding aspect, CRA is not designed to pay for workforce. It's just not. And I just want Attorney Massey to speak on that, because I think that the city could possibly question about mismanagement of funding if we continue to go down this path.
Yes, ma'am. We are governed by a state statute that defines pretty rigidly what we can use CRA funds for. And unfortunately, in this case, the statute basically requires that CRA funds be used for physical redevelopment activities, largely infrastructure improvements. It also allows for it to be used for affordable housing purposes or for community policing purposes. Programs such as the ones that are being discussed this morning really don't fall under the CRA, what we're permitted to spend funds on. The way we have been able to stretch this is that we have tied these summer youth programs or the youth academy program to an activity or a project that enhances redevelopment activities within East Tampa or another redevelopment area where those youths are from. If you untether those things, then it becomes a real problem under the statute to justify the use of CRA funds for those programs. So I think part of the idea is by moving this under Ms. Nguyen and under the city umbrella, you can then allow the youth to do a lot more different things, and they don't have to be tied to projects that enhance the redevelopment area or address some of the blight conditions. So.
Thank you very much. So really what I want to say to the public, thank you for expressing that. Really, it is our job up here when it's time for the budget to ensure the equity and fairness that East Tampa young people get opportunities that possibly can even expand beyond the 70 that you're asking for. But you have to give it a fair shot in terms of communicating with schools, tying it to that high school credit will do wonders for kids in creating opportunities. So really it's about trust and keeping the lines of communication open, letting Ms. Castillo and Osea Nguyen, the administrator, do their jobs, along with us making sure and questioning the community questioning so that we can get it right as we move forward, but not using CRA dollars. So that's all I want to say. Any other comments on that? Okay.
If this was a first year program, then I would accept that. We've been working on this for 4 years.
Ms. Burton.
That's all I'm gonna say. 4 years and we can't get anywhere.
Okay.
And in the CRA, Nancy, it also talks about how do you
Ms. Burton.
stop truancy,
Ms. Burton.
juvenile delinquency. Speak to that.
Okay.
It doesn't. So.
This is unfortunate. We're not always going to agree. But Mr. McCray, you have another portion of your presentation that you need to finish.
Yes,
Before
and I will move it along.
Because it's 12:30.
Yes, the East Tampa Youth Leadership Entrepreneurship Academy was approved by the CRA board sometime in 2021. And Ms. Alyssa Hogan with Alyssa Hogan Enterprises was awarded the contract through the procurement process here at the city of Tampa. And they have she serves as program manager, there's an operations manager, and then a local recruiter. They are averaging about 14 active participants one Saturday a month. And when the program was established, I believe the CAC at that time had, during that process, we're anticipating about 40. It has been a struggle to, to recruit and maintain students. And when I'm asked about it, the summer youth program, those kids are there and they're being compensated. So it's been a little bit more difficult to get full participation and recruit students on a Saturday. And so their contract is currently up and will be up on May 25th of 2024. We are in a situation now where we need to make a decision, or the CRA board needs to decide whether or not that will continue. I have had conversations with Ms. Hogan as the vendor to let her know that, we will be making a decision today, and just wanted to share that with you all. And some of the topics that they cover on those Saturdays: financial and computer literacy, identity and discoveries, mental health, real estate, property acquisition. They bring in guest speakers on each Saturday. Some of them have been our CAC members and individuals from nonprofits within East Tampa that have served. And, they've done college tours. They've done some service learning, cleanup. One of the photos you see there was with Habitat for Humanity. So they are being exposed one Saturday a month to various dynamics. And just wanted to know what the pleasure of the CRA board would be.
Okay, is there a pleasure of the board? Can I have a motion? Sure, Board Member Carlson.
I think this is all excellent. This is the kind of stuff that I've wanted to support all along, and I'm surprised we're able to. But can you, not now, but as you track this, can you just come back to us with what the success stories are and whatever measures you're using? An ideal outcome is that people would start businesses at some point.
Board Member Hurte.
Thank you. I think this is very important because this is very similar to the Mayor's Youth Corps, or this is compared. This is the program that's compared to the Mayor's Youth Corps, correct? Somewhat. So I think part of the issue is that the Mayor's Youth Corps is considered to be harder for some youth to get into or to have access to, because it requires parents to bring students places. So I believe there is a role for this. I don't know if it's what it is today. I don't know if it's finding a way to expand Mayor's Youth Corps to make it more accessible. But I also do not believe that this is a CRA issue. I think that that's really that what we're trying to do today is to transition these activities, which were started when I think part of the confusion is the CRA up until 2019 was allowed to do a lot of this. And then the state really tightened the rules about how we could spend the money. So this is how we're transitioning. So I don't want this program to go away necessarily, but do I think it should stay in the current iteration? Probably not. Probably needs a refresh, but I don't know what that looks like. So I'm hesitant to say, yes, let's expand this today. If 40 students are supposed to be involved, yet we're only getting 14. So to me, this needs a revamp. And I don't know, like I said, what that looks like, but it doesn't look like to me a CRA project. It looks like something to be a collaboration between Miss Wynn and I believe that the Mayor's Youth Corps is already under her to some degree, but to work, no, it isn't. Okay, well then we'll have to figure out how to combine that, but it should be, and how that works forward.
Board Member Miranda, and then we want to hear from Attorney Massey.
Certainly, I think that the only way to find out how the program is when you have a few years under your belt and you follow the kids, young people, what they're doing at that point in their life, 2 or 3 years after they've been here. That's the only way you're going to find out. I mean, you can't do it just with 1 or 2 years. It takes 3 or 4 years to find out exactly what the outcome is of their help. And I'm sure they're going to have much better opportunity to go forward in the program than being without the program. That's just my feeling.
Attorney
But
Mack.
again,
Oh, sorry.
the CRA is kind of iffy if it's there at all.
Yeah.
Attorney Massey.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to this. Board Member Hurtak is correct. Before 2019, the rules that govern CRAs were a lot more relaxed. The legislature tightened those in 2019. The only way we have been able to really justify the CRA funding both the Youth Academy and the Summer Youth Program is requiring that the youth that served in the summer program or in the academy also do service projects or pick up trash or do things within the redevelopment area which address some slum and blight condition within the area. That's how we have been able to justify it legally. And so I think part of what staff, and I may be misstating this, is requesting is the board move to transition those out from under the CRA and over to the city and let Ms. Nguyen take over both these programs. And I mean, obviously that would have to be monitored by you as city council to make sure it was still accomplishing the same things and maybe the expanded purposes and allow the flexibility that the community would like, because I don't think they like the restrictions that we place on them because they are funded by the CRA. So.
Board Member Clendenin.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion for staff, to direct staff to take the actions to move these programs from the CRA to Parks and Rec.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor with some, and a second by Board Member Maniscalco. Discussion, Board Member Carlson.
I'm in favor of the programs, but I'm against moving it inside the city. If it's illegal for us to spend the money with outside and outsourcing, which I think brings better ideas and more efficiency, then it's illegal for us to put it inside the city. And so I disagree with that. We'll vote no.
Point of information, Mr. Mousy, is it illegal for the city to run programs like this?
Not in my opinion.
No, my point.
I would like to address you all.
Could I?
Board Member Carlson.
Yeah, my point is just that if we are not allowed to use CRA money to pay a private vendor to run this program, then because of the definition of it, then we are not able to put the money inside the city to do it either.
It's not the issue of the private vendor.
Right.
The issue is, in order to run those programs through the CRA, we have to tie it to a redevelopment activity, which restricts what we can do with those. If you put them under the general revenue and you put it under the city, then it's more flexible what you can do.
But you're saying the same thing. Why can't the private vendor do that?
Because we're spending
coming from
CRA
CRA.
funds. If it's general funds are being used, you don't have the same restrictions on the use of those funds. CRA funds are restricted by the statute. General funds aren't.
I understand that. My point is, if it has to be tied to redevelopment, why can't we put that requirement on the private vendor?
We do, but I think one of the things we're asking, based on some of the input from the community, and maybe Mr. Drumgo would want to address this, is that by moving this under the city and being funded through the general fund and not through CRA funds, then we may contract with private vendors, but you don't have the same restrictions. You don't have to say these youths have to pick up trash. You don't have to you don't require that they do redevelopment activities. You can put them in city offices downtown. You can put them in, go out to the water plant. You can do all sorts of different things with
Correct.
them. So that's,
if I may, Madam Chair, if I may, I know,
Board Member.
and I'll be quick.
Administrator Drumgo.
Couple points of clarity. We are exactly doing that. We want to, and this is two-part. There are two programs. One is a summer youth program. We would like to transition that program internally under Administrator Nguyen, unfunded by the CRA, funded by general fund dollars, which would be subject to the approval of the board during the budgetary process, which is why I keep talking about numbers. The numbers matter at that point. That's when there can be decisions about whether it's 36 or 72. The other point of clarity, the second program, which is privately contracted with Ms. Alyssa Hogan, that contract is up for renewal. We're asking to basically issue a notice of non-renewal to her so that program can go away. So those are two separate items. That program, again, is not, they're not the same as this summer youth program. So the two items are not the same. And then the third thing that Attorney Massey is referring to, it would open up that flexibility for those students to do the things throughout the city that the community is asking for, to place the students in those spaces without the same restrictions. And that's it.
Can I just ask a clarifying question?
Board Member Carlson.
Okay, I apologize if I misunderstood.
Yes,
So if
sir.
you move it inside the city, you said it's going to be paid with general funds, not with CRA funds?
That is accurate.
Okay, I'm fine
Yes,
with
sir.
that.
We would not attempt to fund a city program through CRA dollars.
That was the problem I thought we were.
No, sir.
Okay, and just for clarity, the contract is ending, so that doesn't necessarily mean that it would get renewed under the budget either. You're just saying that if we did move it over to the city general funds.
What I'm saying is that
I'm talking about the leadership.
the leadership, that leadership piece, we're not asking to continue to renew that.
Right.
Correct. We're not asking for that renewal. We need to notify that contractor that our intent is to not renew that.
Okay, and so I just want to clarify what is your motion?
Well, question, is your vision to reincarnate that type of a program within the administration?
There's CRA.
That was, I would say that was not the intent. I think that we had the summer youth program, and so we were addressing that component of it. However, we have this other program that's being operated, that's being funded by the CRA, that also does not comply with the statutory expenditure requirement.
I get that. I go back to Councilwoman Hurtak's point. Because the Mayor's Youth Corps has other challenges that some of the folks that are economically challenged aren't able to participate. So I find it interesting to be able to have a targeted program for those folks that may be not capable of participating in the Mayor's Youth Corps. So I don't necessarily feel good about losing that opportunity. So I think my motion would be to direct staff to take the steps to look at transitioning both programs into the administration and then report back, of course, because this is just asking you guys to take the first proof positive steps to make this transition happen.
Understood.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, just clarify, we already have a motion by you on the floor, so.
Yeah, that is the motion.
Okay, and it was seconded by Maniscalco. Comment by Board Member Hurtak.
Yes, just one more thing, and I agree with Board Member Clendenin, and I would just say that's fine if this particular program goes away, but the conversation about what to replace it with or how we augment the Mayor's Youth Corps is what needs to happen next. And I don't know if that needs to happen, if that motion needs to be made as when we sit as council, or if that's just direction we can give. If you would just let us know which would be best.
So,
Let me clarify the motion.
Go ahead, Board Member.
Just to ensure, I'm not saying that we have to transfer the contract. I'm saying this concept of this idea, we recreate this under the administration along with the work program.
thank you.
Okay, I want to just make a comment before we take this vote. One of the things that we need to keep in mind is there is a wonderful grand opening of the Skills Center in East Tampa that just opened, and everything listed here are things that they actually can address. So we have a community partner where this could transition outside of the city in general, and that could be under consideration as well. So let's take this vote. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries, and now it's time for lunch. It is 12:44. We can come back at 1:45 if that's okay, an hour.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
If I could add. So we do have two motions. One is the neighborhood commercial districts. If the motion maker would be open to maybe continuing that discussion, or if it is timely for today, we can have it after lunch.
It's time for us to go to lunch because board members, have medical, we need to go to lunch right now. So all those in favor?
Stop the meeting like minutes, right?
Yes.
We have something to come back to?
We could potentially
Basically,
continue.
If you move the discussion about that one item, I think we could wrap this up in 5 minutes. So,
Okay.
If the motion maker and board is receptive to
All
that.
right, so what y'all say, board?
I just wanted to show 3 slides regarding that real fast.
See, that won't be real fast. We're gonna have to take lunch.
that's fine.
We're gonna take lunch. and
Never
then
mind,
we'll
I'll make a motion to continue it to the next meeting.
Okay.
Second. This is for 8.
This is item number 8 to be continued to May 9th. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay,
My apologies on that, and I can do the director's report in 2 minutes.
okay, let's go.
If so, moved by the board. Erica Moody, CRA Director, going through the Director's Report very speedily, just really teeing up some motions. We have Washington Street Park Conceptual Plan. The contractors would like to come and present that concept plan at the May 9th board meeting.
Second.
All those in favor? Oppose? Motion carries.
Thank you very much. We also have the Florida Aquariums Redevelopment Project Grant. They will be presenting to the CAC on May 7th, and they could come to the CRA board on May 9th.
Okay, moved by Board Member Clendenin, second by Board Member Miranda. I just want to make sure the court gets that. All those in favor? Oppose? Motion carries.
Thank you. The Downtown Partnership has a proposal on revitalizing Franklin Street. It's been heard by the CAC. There is a recommendation to move forward, so they could come and present to the board as early as May 9th.
Okay, Board Member Vieira, second by Board Member Maniscalco. All those in favor?
Thank you. In East Tampa, we are looking at our property for housing infill development. That will be going to the CAC on May 7th, and we can bring the housing infill list to the CRA board on May 9th for discussion.
Okay, Miranda, second by Board Member Maniscalco. All those in favor?
Thank you, and I did want to recognize some staff that have been in the room. We have a new project manager. His name is Nicholas Bennett, and he was previously the Chief Development of Housing for St. Vincent de Paul Cares, so we're really excited to welcome him to the team as our new PC.
Welcome, sir. Welcome.
Welcome, Nick. And then we also have Mr. Bryce Faringer. He is our new urban planner too, and he comes from us from the Planning Commission, so we're excited to have that expertise on our staff as well. So welcome. Welcome, Bryce. Quite the first board meeting to join. We learn quick around here. And then also just wanted to recognize we have Corrine Linebrink. She served the CRA for over 30 years. And Ybor was foundational to a lot of the redevelopment activities, brought the YES team. She's not here today, but I think she deserves the public recognition. So just wanted to thank Corrine.
Retiring. Congratulations.
And that is it. Thank you very much, board.
Okay, so we don't have to come back.
Move the resolution, or move the, no, we have,
Wait 1 second.
move the required approvals.
All those in favor of moving the required approvals? All those opposed? Second by Miranda. Did you second it, Miranda? Okay. All right.
So you for the planning commission, I need you to put the
Faster
IN back on
director
your
reports,
keyboard.
Ms. Moody.
'Cause for some reason, the planning commission doesn't know how to say inconsistent. So if you put the IN back on your keyboard before you start working for the city.
Okay, so we have new business and recognize the board member Maniscalco for new business.
Yes, real quick, I'd like just a staff report on June 13th regarding homes within the CRAs, we can say all the CRAs, that have plywood on the windows, to look at polycarbonate or other materials. This is because I've met with some community members regarding some abandoned properties. You know, when you have plywood on the windows, it invites people to possibly break in and homeless and whatnot. Instead, this would, you know, help properties, well, have folks get up to, I don't want to say up to code, but I know that in Tampa, you don't need a permit to put plywood on your windows, but I don't know if these other materials that look like windows are acceptable. And if there are individuals that have, if there's financial constraints and they can't afford to bring this in compliance, if we can do some kind of possible hardship program, being that these are within CRAs, to allow for those individuals to get those properties shored up. I know we do facade grants, so it's not like a facade grant, but it's some other option in order to get those houses, you know, safer looking and more secure.
Okay, board member Maniscalco, so your motion is for staff to bring back a report?
Yeah, on June 13th, if it's something that we can do and within the CRA boundaries from plywood to other materials.
Okay, there's a second by Miranda, discussion by board member Hurtak.
Yes, I think that's really more of a code issue that we would need to discuss on city council as a code issue before bringing it to the CRA.
Right.
I see your point about funding it
Yeah.
for people that would need it, but we need to get through the code before bringing it back here.
So I'll bring that up then at a regular council meeting, go from there, and if it comes back to CRA, but at least I want to get the ball rolling in the discussion, so I'll withdraw my motion, I'll bring it up during
But I
the
love your
regular meeting.
idea.
Yeah.
For the paying
And
for
I'll-
it,
I'll
yeah.
clarify
Bobby
it
Cretan
more
gave a
clearly.
lot of information on that. Okay, a motion to receive and file?
I
Board member Vieira.
Thank you very much.
Yes, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam. I have two motions, if I may.
Anyone
First
else?
is, I've been working with HART staff and including in the HART meetings, Commissioner Gwen Myers, on having a report on feasibility of CRA being able to assist HART, particularly with bus stops, as well as other areas potentially where CRA can assist. I'll have that in. Ms. Moody, is July or August okay? I mean, I can move it whatever.
July would be great, and we're
Okay.
in conversations with Hart right now, so
Great.
it's timely.
Thank you.
Second.
So that's my first.
Okay. Second by Board Member Maniscalco. All those in favor?
Aye.
And then second,
Go ahead.
yes,
sir.
ma'am. And then second and lastly is, I was speaking with the Children's Museum, which is downtown, and on the possibility of CRA downtown assisting with them on a sensory room and improvements at the Children's Museum. So maybe for staff to speak with them and come back in, let's say, August of 2024.
Second.
Second by Board Member Carlson. All those in favor?
And that's
Opposed?
it. Thank you very much.
Okay. Now, Board Member Carlson, you're recognized.
Yeah, I just want to hand out these pages real fast. There are 3 pages each. And it'll take me 30 seconds just to flash these real fast.
Oh, you got to go to the podium?
1,
Oh, okay.
2, 3.
When we talk about terms, some folks talk about developing corridors, and we can talk about this in city council and CRA. This is like Dale Mabry and some other corridors. To me, this is corridors where you have long sprawl with not a lot of density. Oppose that to boulevards, which is like Buenos Aires and Barcelona. And Stephen and I and others have been talking about this. Imagine Dale Mabry between Midtown and Kennedy if it looked like this instead of like this. But when we talk about corridors, we can develop down corridors. But when I talk about neighborhood commercial districts, I had AI do this morning. Imagine where Jackson Market is in East Tampa. I'm using that as an example. We can debate later. But imagine on each of 4 corners, we had 4-story buildings. And on the bottom of one, we had a Jackson's Market. Another one, we had a coffee shop with an incubator space and others. A neighborhood commercial district is like 4 blocks or 8 blocks. It's not this. It's not a corridor. So I just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
Thank you for your homework. That's nice. Okay, motion to receive and file. All those in favor? Okay, this meeting is adjourned, and we'll see each other at 5:01.